Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 41. Uttara said, "It hath been heard by us that a corpse is tied in this tree. How can I, therefore, being a prince by birth, touch it with my hands? Born in the Kshatriya order, and the son of a great king, and always observant of mantras and vows, it is not becoming of me to touch it. Why shouldst thou, O Vrhanala, make me a polluted and unclean bearer of corpses, by compelling me to come in contact with a corpse?" Vrhanala said, "Thou shalt, O King of Kings, remain clean and unpolluted. Do not fear, there are only bows in this tree, and not corpses. Heir to the king of the Matsyas, and born in a noble family, why should I, O Prince, make thee do such a reproachable deed?" Vyasa said, thus addressed by Partha, Virata's son, decked in earrings, alighted from the car, and climbed up that Sami tree reluctantly. And staying on the car, Dhananjaya, that slayer of enemies, said unto him, "Speedily bring thou down those bows from the top of the tree." And cutting off their wrappings first and then the ropes with which they were tied, the prince beheld the Gandiva there along with 4 other bows. And as they were united, the splendor of those bows, radiant as the sun, began to shine with great effulgence like unto that of the planets about the time of their rising. And beholding the forms of those bows, so like unto sighing snakes, he became afflicted with fear, and in a moment the bristles of his body stood on their ends. And touching those large bows of great splendor, Virata's son, O king, thus spake unto Arjuna. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 42. Uttara said, "To what warrior of fame doth this excellent bow belong, on which are 100 golden bosses, and which hath such radiant ends? Whose is this excellent bow of good sides and easy hold, on the staff of which shine golden elephants of such brightness? Whose is this excellent bow, adorned with 3 scores of indigo-apkas of pure gold, placed on the back of the staff at proper intervals? Whose is this excellent bow, furnished with 3 golden suns of great effulgence, blazing forth with such brilliancy? Whose is this beautiful bow which is variegated with gold and gems, and on which are golden insects set with beautiful stones? Whose are these arrows furnished with wing around, numbering 1,000, having golden heads, and cased in golden quivers? Who owneth these large shafts, so thick, furnished with vulturine wings whetted on stone, yellowish in hue, sharp-pointed, well-tempered, and entirely made of iron? Whose is this sable quiver, bearing 5 images of tigers, which holdeth shafts intermixed with boriered arrows, altogether numbering 10? Whose are these 700 arrows, long and thick, capable of drinking the enemy's blood, and looking like the crescent-shaped moon? Whose are these gold-crested arrows whetted on stones, the lower halves of which are well furnished with wings of the hue of parrot's feather, and the upper halves of well-tempered steels? Whose is this excellent sword, irresistible and terrible to adversaries, with the mark of a toad on it, and pointed like a toad's head? Cased in variegated sheath of tiger skin, whose is this large sword of excellent blade, and variegated with gold, and furnished with tinkling bells? Whose is this handsome scimitar of polished blade and golden hilt? Manufactured in the country of the Nishadas, irresistible, incapable of being broken, whose is this sword of polished blade in a scabbard of cowskin? Whose is this beautiful and long sword, sable in hue as the sky, mounted with gold, well-tempered, and cased in a sheath of goatskin? Who owneth this heavy, well-tempered, and broad sword, just longer than the breadth of 30 fingers, polished by constant clash with others' weapons, and kept in a case of gold, bright as fire? Whose is this beautiful scimitar of sable blade, covered with golden bosses, capable of cutting through the bodies of adversaries, whose touch is as fatal as that of a venomous snake, which is irresistible and exciteth the terror of foes? Asked by me, O Vrhanala, do thou answer me truly? Great is my wonder at the sight of all these excellent objects. Footnotes 73:1 Indian insects of a particular kind. 73:2 Most editions read chapas, which is evidently wrong. The correct reading is avapa, meaning quiver. The Burdwan pundits give this latter reading. 74:1 Some read Chandragadarshanas. The correct reading is Chandragadarshanas. 74:2 Most editions read Hemapunka and Salasita in the instrumental plural. The correct reading is their nominative plural forms. 74:3 Sayaka means here, as explained by Nilkantha, a sword and not a shaft. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 43. Vrihanala said, that about which thou hast first inquired is Arjuna's bow, of worldwide fame, called Gandiva, capable of devastating hostile hosts. Embellished with gold, this Gandiva, the highest and largest of all weapons, belonged to Arjuna. Alone equal unto 100,000 weapons, and always capable of extending the confines of kingdoms, it is with this that Partha vanquisheth in battle both men and celestials. Worshipped ever by the gods, the Danavas and the Gandharvas, and variegated with excellent colors, this large and smooth bow is without a knot or stain anywhere. Shiva held it first for 1,000 years. Afterwards Prajapati held it for 503 years. After that Sakra, for 580 years. And then Soma held it for 500 years. And after that Varuna held it for 100 years. And finally Partha, surnamed Swetavahana, hath held it for 65 years. Endued with great energy and of high celestial origin, this is the best of all bows. Adored among gods and men, it hath a handsome form. Partha obtained this beautiful bow from Varuna. This other bow of handsome sides and golden handle is Bhima's, with which that son of Pritha, that chastiser of foes, had conquered the whole of the eastern regions. This other excellent bow of beautiful shape, adorned with images of Indragopikas, belongeth, O Virata's son, to King Yudhishthira. This other weapon with golden suns of blazing splendor shedding a dazzling effulgence around, belongeth to Nakula. And this bow adorned with golden images of insects and set also with gems and stones, belongeth to that son of Madri who is called Sadeva. These winged arrows, 1,000 in number, sharp as razors and destructive as the poison of snakes, belong, O Virata's son, to Arjuna. When shooting them in battle against foes, these swift arrows blaze forth more brilliantly and become inexhaustible. And these long and thick shafts, resembling the lunar crescent in shape, keen-edged and capable of thinning the enemy's ranks, belong to Bhima. And this quiver bearing 5 images of tigers, full of yellowish shafts whetted on stone and furnished with golden wings, belong to Nakula. This is the quiver of the intelligent son of Madri, with which he had conquered in battle the whole of the western regions. And these arrows, all effulgent as the sun, painted all over with various colors, and capable of destroying enemies by thousands, are those of Sadeva. And these short and well-tempered and thick shafts, furnished with long feathers and golden heads, and consisting of 3 knots, belong to King Yudhishthira. And this sword with blade long and carved with the image of a toad and head shaped as a toad's mouth, strong and irresistible, belongeth to Arjuna. Cased in a sheath of tiger skin, of long blade, handsome and irresistible, and terrible to adversaries, this sword belongeth to Bhimasena. Of excellent blade and cased in a well-painted sheath, and furnished with a golden hilt, this handsome sword belongeth to the wise Kaurava Yudhishthira the just. And this sword of strong blade, irresistible and intended for various excellent modes of fight and cased in a sheath of goatskin, belongeth to Nakula. And this huge scimitar, cased in a sheath of cowskin, strong and irresistible, belongeth to Sadeva. Footnotes 75:1 From the color of his steeds. 75:2 Nilkantha spends much learning and ingenuity in making out that 65 years in this connection means 32 years of ordinary human computation. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 44. Uttara said, indeed, these weapons adorned with gold, belonging to the light-handed and high-souled Partha, look exceedingly beautiful. But where are that Arjuna, the son of Pritha, and Yudhishthira of the Kuru race, and Nakula, and Sadeva, and Bhimasena, the sons of Pandu? Having lost their kingdom at dice, the high-souled Pandavas, capable of destroying all foes, are no longer heard of. Where also is Draupadi, the princess of Panchala, famed as the gem among women, who followed the sons of Pandu after their defeat at dice to the forest. Arjuna said, I am Arjuna, called also Partha. Thy father's courtier is Yudhishthira, and thy father's cook Vallava is Bhimasena, the groom of horses is Nakula, and Sadeva is in the cow-pen. And know thou that the Sarandri is Draupadi, for whose sake the Kichakas have been slain. Uttara said, I would believe all this if thou canst enumerate the 10 names of Partha, previously heard by me. Arjuna said, I will, O son of Virata, tell thee my 10 names. Listen thou and compare them with what thou hadst heard before. Listen to them with close attention and concentrated mind. They are Arjuna, Falguna, Jishnu, Kiritan, Swetavahana, Vibhatsu, Vijaya, Krishna, Savyasakan, and Dhananjaya. Uttara said, Tell me truly, why art thou called Vijaya, and why Swetavahana? Why art thou named Krishna, and why Arjuna, and Falguna, and Jishnu, and Kiritan, and Vibhatsu, and for what art thou Dhananjaya and Savyasakan? I have heard before about the origin of the several names of that hero, and can put faith in thy words if thou canst tell me all about them. Arjuna said, They called me Dhananjaya because I lived in the midst of wealth, having subjugated all the countries and taking away their treasures. They called me Vijaya because when I go out to battle with invincible kings, I never return from the field without vanquishing them. I am called Swetavahana because when battling with the foe, white horses decked in golden armor are always yoked unto my car. They call me Falguna because I was born on the breast of the Himavad on a day when the constellation Uttara Falguna was on the ascendant. I am named Kiritan from a diadem, resplendent like the sun, having been placed of old on my head by Indra during my encounter with the powerful Danavas. I am known as Vibhatsu among gods and men, for my never having committed a detestable deed on the battlefield. And since both of my hands are capable of drawing the Gandiva, I am known as Savyasakan among gods and men. They call me Arjuna because my complexion is very rare within the 4 boundaries of the earth, and because also my acts are always stainless. I am known among human beings and celestials by the name of Jishnu, because I am unapproachable and incapable of being kept down, and a tamer of adversaries and son of the slayer of Paka. And Krishna, my 10th appellation, was given to me by my father out of affection towards his black-skinned boy of great purity. Vaisampayana continued, the son of Virata then, approaching nearer, saluted Partha and said, My name is Bhumanjaya, and I am also called Uttara. It is by good luck, O Partha, that I behold thee. Thou art welcome, O Dhananjaya. O thou with red eyes, and arms that are mighty and each like unto the trunk of an elephant, it behoveth thee to pardon what I said unto thee from ignorance. And as wonderful and difficult have been the feats achieved by thee before, my fears have been dispelled, and indeed the love I bear to thee is great. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 45. Uttara said, O hero, mounting on this large car with myself as driver, which division of the hostile army wouldst thou penetrate? Commanded by thee, I would drive thee thither. Arjuna said, I am pleased with thee, O tiger among men. Thou hast no cause of fear. I will rout all thy foes in battle, O great warrior, and, O thou of mighty arms, be at thy ease. Accomplishing great and terrible feats in the melee, I will fight with thy foes. Tie quickly all those quivers to my car, and take, from among those, a sword of polished blade and adorned with gold. Vaisampayana continued, hearing these words of Arjuna, Uttara cast off all inactivity. And he speedily alighted from the tree, bringing with him Arjuna's weapons. Then Arjuna addressed him, saying, Yes, I will fight with the Kurus and recover thy kind. Protected by me, the top of this car will be to thee as a citadel. The passages and alleys and other divisions of this car will be the streets and edifices of that fortified city. These my arms will be its ramparts and gateways. This treble pole and my quiver will constitute defensive works inaccessible to the foe. This my banner single and grand will it not alone be equal unto those of thy city? This my bowstring will constitute the catapults and cannons for vomiting forth missiles on the besieging ghost. My excited wrath will make that fortress formidable, and the clatter of my car wheels will it not resemble the kettle drums of thy capital? Ridden by myself wielding the Gandiva, this car will be incapable of being vanquished by the hostile host. O son of Virata, let thy fear be dispelled. Uttara said, I am no longer afraid of these. I know thy steadiness in battle, which is even like unto that of Kesva or Indra himself. But reflecting on this, I am continually bewildered. Foolish as I am incapable of arriving at certain conclusion. By what distressful circumstances could a person of such handsome limbs and auspicious signs become deprived of manhood? Indeed, thou seemest to me to be Mahadeva, or Indra, or the chief of the Gandharvas, dwelling in the guise only of one of the third sex. Arjuna said, I tell thee truly that I am only observing this vow for a whole year agreeable to the behest of my elder brother. O thou of mighty arms, I am not truly one of the neuter sex, but I have adopted this vow of eunuchism from subservience to another's will and from desire of religious merit. O Prince, know me now to have completed my vow. Uttara said, Thou hast conferred a great favor on me today, for I now find that my suspicion was not altogether unfounded. Indeed, such a person as thou, O best of men, cannot be of the neuter sex. I have now an ally in battle. I can now fight with the celestials themselves. My fears have been dispelled. What shall I do? Command me now. Trained in driving cars by a learned preceptor, I will, O bull among men, hold the reins of thy horses that are capable of breaking the ranks of hostile cars. Know me, O bull among men, to be as competent a charioteer as Daruka of Vasudeva or Madali of Sakra. The horse that is yoked unto the right-hand pole of thy car, and whose hoofs as they light on the ground are scarcely visible when running, is like unto Sugriva of Krishna. This other handsome horse, the foremost of his race, that is yoked unto the left pole, is, I regard, equal in speed to Megapushpa. This third beautiful horse, clad in golden mail, yoked unto the rear pole on the left, is, I regard, Sivya equal in speed to but superior in strength. And this fourth horse, yoked to the rear pole on the right, is regarded as superior to Valahaka in speed and strength. This car is worthy of bearing on the field of battle a bowman like thee, and thou also art worthy of fighting on this car. This is what I think. Vaisampayana continued, Then Arjuna, endued with great energy, took off the bracelets from his arms and wore on his hands a pair of beautiful gloves embroidered with gold. And he then tied his black and curling locks with a piece of white cloth. And seated on that excellent car with face turned to the east, the mighty armed hero, purifying his body and concentrating his soul, recalled to his mind all his weapons. And all the weapons came, and addressing the royal son of Partha, said, We are here, O illustrious one. We are thy servants, O son of Indra. And bowing unto them, Partha received them unto his hands, and replied unto them, saying, Dwell ye all in my memory. And obtaining all his weapons, the hero looked cheerful. And quickly stringing his bow, the Gandiva, he twanged it. And the twang of that bow was as loud as the collision of two mighty bulls. And dreadful was the sound that filled the earth, and violent was the wind that blew on all sides. And thick was the shower of fallen meteors, and all sides were enveloped in gloom. And the birds began to totter in the skies, and large trees began to shake. And loud as the burst of the thunder, the Kurus knew from that sound that it was Arjuna that drew with his hands the string of his best of bows from his car. And Uttara said, Thou, O best of Pandavas, art alone. These mighty car warriors are many. How wilt thou vanquish in battle all these that are skilled in every kind of weapon? Thou, O son of Kunti, art without a follower, while the Kauravas have many. It is for this, O thou of mighty arms, that I stay beside thee, stricken with fear. Bursting out into loud laughter, Partha said unto him, Be not afraid, O hero, what friendly follower had I while fighting with the mighty Gandharvas on the occasion of the Gashayatra? Who was my ally while engaged in the terrific conflict at Khandava against so many celestials and Danavas? Who was my ally when I fought, on behalf of the Lord of the Celestials against the mighty Nivedakavachas and the Palomas? And who was my ally, O child, while I encountered in battle innumerable kings at the Swayamvara to the princess of Panchala? Trained in arms by the preceptor Drona, by Sakra, and Vaisravana, and Yama, and Varuna, and Agni, and Kripa, and Krishna of Madhu's race, and by the wielder of the Panaka, Shiva, why shall I not fight with these? Drive thou my car speedily, and let thy heart's fever be dispelled. Footnotes 79:1 Some texts read, One large meteor fell. 79:2 in some editions read, Bharata Dwijam, and Mahabharata for Mahadrumam. The meaning would then be, the banners of the hostile army began to tremble in the sky, and large lakes were agitated. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 46. Vyasa said, making Uttara his charioteer, and circumambulating the Sami tree, the son of Pandu set out taking all his weapons with him. And that mighty car warrior set out with Uttara as the driver of his car, having taken down that banner with the lion's figure and deposited it at the foot of the Sami tree. And he hoisted on that car his own golden banner bearing the figure of an ape with a lion's tail, which was a celestial illusion contrived by Viswakarman himself. For, as soon, indeed, as he had thought of that gift of Agni, then the latter, knowing his wish, ordered those superhuman creatures that usually sat there to take their place in that banner. And furnished with a beautiful flag of handsome make, with quivers attached to it, and adored with gold, that excellent flagstaff of celestial beauty then quickly fell from the firmament on his car. And beholding that banner arrived on his car, the hero circumambulated it, respectively. And then the eight-bannered Vibhatsu, the son of Kunti, called also Swetavahana, with fingers cased in leathern fences of the iguana skin, and taking up his bow and arrows set out in a northerly direction. And that grinder of foes, possessed of great strength, then forcibly blew his large conch shell, of thundering sound, capable of making the bristles of foes to stand on their ends. And at the sound of that conch, those steeds endued with swiftness dropped down on the ground on their knees. And Uttara also, greatly affrighted, sat down on the car. And thereupon the son of Kunti took the reins himself and raising the steeds, placed them in their proper positions. And embracing Uttara, he encouraged him also, saying, Fear not, O foremost of princes, thou art, O chastiser of foes, a Kshatriya by birth. Why, O tiger among men, dost thou become so dispirited in the midst of foes? Thou must have heard before the blare of many conchs and the note of many trumpets, and the roar also of many elephants in the midst of ranks arrayed for battle. Why art thou, therefore, so dispirited and agitated and terrified by the blare of this conch, as if thou wert an ordinary person? Uttara said, Heard have I the blare of many a conch and many a trumpet and the roar of many an elephant stationed in the battle array, but never have I heard before the blare of such conch. Nor have I ever seen a banner like this. Never before have I heard also the twang of a bow such as this. Truly, sir, with the blare of this conch, the twang of this bow, the superhuman cries of the creatures stationed on this banner, and the battle of this car, my mind is greatly bewildered. My perception of the directions also is confused, and my heart is painfully afflicted. The whole firmament seemeth to me to have been covered by this banner, and everything seemeth to be hidden from my view. My ears also have been deafened by the twang of the Gandiva. Arjuna said, Firmly stand thou on the car, pressing thy feet on it, and tightly catch hold of the bridles, for I will blow the conch again. Vyasa said, Arjuna then blew his conch again, that conch which filled foes with grief and enhanced the joy of friends. And the sound was so loud that it seemed to split hills and mountains, and pierce mountain caves and the cardinal points. And Uttara once again sat down on the car, clinging to it in fear. And with the blare of the conch and the rattle of the car wheels, and the twang of the Gandiva, the earth itself seemed to tremble. And beholding Uttara's fight, Dhananjaya began to comfort him again. Meanwhile, Drona said, From the rattle of the car, and from the manner in which the clouds have enveloped the sky and the earth itself trembles, this warrior can be none else than Savyasakan. Our weapons do not shine, our steeds are dispirited, and our fires, though fed with fuel, do not blare up. All this is ominous. All our animals are setting up a frightful howl, gazing towards the sun. The crows are perching on our banners. All this is ominous. Yon vultures and kites on our right portend a great danger. That jackal also, running through our ranks, waileth dismally. Lo, it hath escaped unstruck. All this portends a heavy calamity. The bristles also of ye all are on their ends. Surely, this forebodes a great destruction of Kshatriyas in battle. Things endued with light are all pale, beasts and birds look fierce, and there are to be witnessed many terrific portents indicative of the destruction of Kshatriyas. And these omens forebode great havoc among ourselves. O king, thy ranks seem to be confounded by these blazing meteors, and thy animals look dispirited and seem to be weeping. Vultures and kites are wheeling all around thy troops. Thou shalt have to repent upon beholding thy army afflicted by Partha's arrows. Indeed, our ranks seem to have been already vanquished, for none is eager to go to fight. All our warriors are of pale face, and almost deprived of their senses. Sending the kine ahead, we should stand here, ready to strike, with all our warriors arrayed in order of battle. Footnotes 80:1 Some texts read Maharatham incorrectly for Hiranmayan. Indeed, Maharatham would give no meaning in this connection. The incomplete edition of the Roy Press under the auspices of the principal of the Calcutta Sanskrit College abounds with such incorrect readings and misprints. 80:2 The Roy Press edition adds here a line which looks very much like an interpolation. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 47. Vyasa said, King Duryodhana then, on the field of battle, said unto Bhishma, and unto Drona that tiger among warriors, and unto Kripa that mighty car warrior, these words, both myself and Kama had said this unto the preceptors. I refer to the subject again, for I am not satisfied with having said it once. Even this was the pledge of the sons of Pandu, that if defeated, at dice, they would reside to our knowledge in countries and woods for 12 years, and 1 more year unknown to us. That 13th year, instead of being over, is yet running. Vibhatsu, therefore, who is still to live undiscovered, hath appeared before us. And if Vibhatsu hath come before the term of exile is at end, the Pandavas shall have to pass another 12 years in the woods. Whether it is due to forgetfulness, on their part, induced by desire of dominion, or whether it is a mistake of ours, it behoveth Bhishma to calculate the shortness or excess of the promised period. When an object of desire may or may not be attained, a doubt necessarily attaches to one of the alternatives, and what is decided in one way often ends differently. Even moralists are puzzled in judging of their own acts. As regards ourselves, we have come hither to fight with the Matsyas and to seize their kind station towards the north. If, meanwhile, it is Arjuna that hath come, what fault can attach to us? We have come hither to fight against the Matsyas on behalf of the Trigartas, and as numerous were the acts represented unto us of the oppressions committed by the Matsyas. It was for this that we promised aid to the Trigartas who were overcome with fear. And it was agreed between us that they should first seize, on the afternoon of the 7th lunar day, the enormous wealth of kine that the Matsyas have, and that we should, at sunrise of the 18th day of the moon, seize these kine when the king of the Matsyas would be pursuing those first seized. It may be that the Trigartas are now bringing away the kine, or being defeated, are coming towards us for negotiating with the king of the Matsyas. Or, it may be, that having driven the Trigartas off, the king of the Matsyas, at the head of this people and his whole army of fierce warriors, appeareth on the scene and advanceth to make night attacks upon us. It may be that some one leader among them, endued with mighty energy, is advancing for vanquishing us, or, it may be that the king himself of the Matsyas is come. But be it the king of the Matsyas or Vibhatsu, we must all fight him. Even this hath been our pledge. Why are all these of foremost car warriors, Bhishma and Drona and Kripa and Vikarna and Drona's son, now sitting on their cars, panic-stricken? At present there is nothing better than fighting. Therefore, make up your minds. If, for the cattle we have seized, an encounter takes place with the divine wielder himself of the thunderbolt, or even with Yama, who is there that will be liable to reach Hastinapura? Pierced by the shafts of the foe, how will the foot soldiers, and flying through the deep forest with their backs on the field, escape with life, when escape for the cavalry is doubtful? Hearing these words of Duryodhana, Karna said, disregarding the preceptor, make all arrangements. He knoweth well the intentions of the Pandavas and strikes terror in our hearts. I see that his affection for Arjuna is very great. Seeing him only coming, he chanteth his praises. Make ye such arrangements that our troops may not break. Everything is in confusion for Drona's having only heard the neigh of Arjuna's steeds. Make ye such arrangements that these troops, come to a distant land in this hot season and in the midst of this mighty forest, may not fall into confusion and be subjugated by the foe. The Pandavas are always the special favorites of the preceptor. The selfish Pandavas have stationed Drona amongst us. Indeed, he betrayeth himself by his speech. Who would ever extol a person upon hearing the neigh only of his steeds? Horses always neigh, whether walking or standing, the winds blow at all times, and Indra also always showereth rain. The roar of the clouds may frequently be heard. What hath Partha to do with these, and why is he to be praised for these? All this, on Drona's part, therefore, is due only to either the desire of doing good to Arjuna or to his wrath and hatred towards us. Preceptors are wise and sinless and very kind to all creatures. They, however, should never be consulted at times of peril. It is in luxurious palaces and assemblies and pleasure gardens that learned men, capable of making speeches, seem to be in their place. Performing many wonderful things, in the assembly, it is there that learned men find their place, or even there where sacrificial utensils and their proper placing and washing are needed. In a knowledge of the lapses of others, and studying the characters of men, and the science of horses and elephants and cars, and treating the diseases of asses and camels and goats and sheep and kine, and planning buildings and gateways, and in pointing out the defects of food and drink, the learned are truly in their own sphere. Disregarding learned men that extol the heroism of the foe, make ye such arrangements that the foe may be destroyed. Placing the kind securely, array the troops in order of battle. Place guards in proper places so that we may fight the foe. Footnotes 81:1 The true reading is Acharya in the dual number, meaning Drona and Kripa. Some texts read the word in the singular form. Nilkantha notices both these reading, but prefers the dual to the singular. 82:1 The meaning is rather doubtful. Duryodhana seems to say that the hostile appearance of Arjuna has been an act of imprudence on his part. The Pandavas, after the expiry of the 13th year, would claim their kingdom. I, Duryodhana, may or may not accede to their demand. When, therefore, it was not certain that Arjuna would be refused by me, his hostile appearance is unwise. He has come sure of victory, but he may yet be defeated. 82:2 The sense seems to be that when moralists even are puzzled in judging of the propriety or otherwise of their acts, it can easily be imagined that the Pandavas, however virtuous, have, in the matter of this their appearance, acted wrongly, for, after all, the 13th year may not have really been over as believed by them. Or, it may mean that as regards our presence here, we have not acted imprudently when even moralists cannot always arrive at right conclusion. It seems that for this Duryodhana proceeds to justify that presence in the following sentences. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 48. Karna said, I behold all these blessed ones, looking as if alarmed and panic-struck and unresolved and unwilling to fight. If he that is come is the king of the Matsyas or Vibhatsu, even I will resist him as the banks resist the swelling sea. Shot from my bow these straight and flying arrows, like gliding snakes, are all sure of aim. Discharged by my light hands, these keen-edged arrows furnished with golden wings shall cover Partha all over, like locusts shrouding a tree. Strongly pressed by these winged arrows, the bowstring will cause these my leathern fences to produce sounds that will be heard to resemble those of a couple of kettle drums. Having been engaged in ascetic austerities for the last 8 and 5 years, Vibhatsu will strike me but mildly in this conflict, and the son of Kunti, having become a Brahmana endued with good qualities, hath thus become a fit person to quietly receive shafts by thousands shot by me. This mighty bowman is indeed celebrated over the 3 worlds. I, too, am, by no means, inferior to Arjuna, that foremost of human beings. With golden arrows furnished with vulturine wings shot on all sides, let the firmament seem today to swarm with fireflies. Slaying Arjuna in battle, I will discharge today that debt, difficult of repayments, but promised of old by me unto Dhritarashtra's son. When man is there, even amongst all the gods and the Asuras, that will endure to stand in the teeth of the straight arrows shot from my bow? Let my flying arrows, winged and depressed at the middle, present the spectacle of the coursing of the fireflies through the welkin. Hard though he be as Indra's thunderbolt and possessed of the energy of the chief of the celestials, I will surely grind Partha, even as one afflicts an elephant by means of burning brands. A heroic and mighty car warrior as he is, and the foremost of all wielders of weapons, I shall seize the unresisting Partha, even like Garuda seizing a snake. Irresistible like fire, and fed by the fuel of swords, darts, and arrows, the blazing Pandava fire that consumeth foes will be extinguished even by myself, who am like unto a mighty cloud incessantly dropping an arrowy shower. The multitude of cars I will lead, constituting its thunder, and the speed of my horses, the wind in advance. Discharged from my bow, my arrows like venomous snakes will pierce Partha's body, like serpent penetrating through an anthill. Pierced with well-tempered and straight shafts, endued with golden wings and great energy, behold ye today the son of Kunti decked like a hill covered with Karnikara flowers. Having obtained weapons from that best of ascetics the son of Jamadagni, I would, relying on their energy, fight with even the celestials. Struck with my javelin, the ape stationed on his banatop shall fall down today on the ground, uttering terrible cries. The firmament will today be filled with the cries of the superhuman creatures stationed in the flagstaff of the foe, and afflicted by me, they will fly away in all directions. I shall today pluck up by the roots the long-existing dart in Duryodhana's heart by throwing Arjuna down from his car. The Kauravas will today behold Partha with his car broken, his horses killed, his valor gone, and himself sighing like a snake. Let the Kauravas, following their own, will go away taking this wealth of kine, or, if they wish, let them stay on their cars and witness my combat. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 49. Kripa said, O Ratheya, thy crooked heart always inclineth to war. Thou knowest not the true nature of things, nor dost thou take into account their after consequences. There are various kinds of expedients inferable from the Scriptures. Of these, a battle hath been regarded by those acquainted with the past as the most sinful. It is only when time and place are favorable that military operations can lead to success. In the present instance, however, the time being unfavorable, no good results will be deprived. A display of prowess in proper time and place becometh beneficial. It is by the favorableness or otherwise of time and place that the opportuneness of an act is determined. Learned men can never act according to the ideas of a carmaker. Considering all this, an encounter with Partha is not advisable for us. Alone he saved the Kurus from the Gandharvas, and alone he satiated Agni. Alone he led the life of a Brahmacharan for 5 years on the breast of Himavat. Taking up Subhadra on his car, alone he challenged Krishna to single combat. Alone he fought with Rudra, who stood before him as a forester. It was in this very forest that Partha rescued Krishna while she was being taken away by Jayadratha. It is he alone that hath, for 5 years, studied the science of weapons under Indra. Alone vanquishing all foes he hath spread the fame of the Kurus. Alone that chastiser of foes vanquished in battle Chitrasena, the king of the Gandharvas, and in a moment his invincible troops also. Alone he overthrew in battle the fierce Nivedakavachas and the Kalakanchas, that were both incapable of being slain by the gods themselves. What, however, O Kama, hath been achieved by thee single-handed like any of the sons of Pandu, each of whom had alone subjugated many lords of earth? Even Indra himself is unfit to encounter Partha in battle. He, therefore, that desireth to fight with Arjuna should take a sedative. As to thyself, thou desirest to take out the fangs of an angry snake of virulent poison by stretching forth thy right hand and extending thy forefinger. Or, wandering alone in the forest, thou desirest to ride an infuriate elephant and go to a boar without a hook in hand. Or, rubbed over with clarified butter and dressed in silken robes, thou desirest to pass through the midst of a blazing fire fed with fat and tallow and clarified butter. Who is there that would, binding his own hands and feet and tying a huge stone unto his neck, cross the ocean swimming with his bare arms? What manliness is there in such an act? O Kama, he is a fool that would, without skill in weapons and without strength, desire to fight with Partha, who is so mighty and skilled in weapons. Dishonestly deceived by us and liberated from 13 years' exile, will not the illustrious hero annihilate us? Having ignorantly come to a place where Partha lay concealed like fire hidden in a well, we have, indeed, exposed to a great danger. But irresistible though he be in battle, we should fight against him. Let, therefore, our troops, clad in mail, stand here arrayed in ranks and ready to strike. Let Drona and Duryodhana and Bhishma and thyself and Drona's son and ourselves all fight with the son of Pritha. Do not, O Kama, act so rashly as to fight alone. If we 6 car warriors be united, we can then be a match for and fight with that son of Pritha who is resolved to fight and who is as fierce as the wielder of the thunderbolt. Aided by our troops arrayed in ranks, ourselves great bowmen standing carefully will fight with Arjuna even as the Dandavas encounter Vasva in battle. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 50. Aswathaman said, the kine, O Karna, have not yet been won, nor have they yet crossed the boundary of their owner's dominions, nor have they yet reached Hastinapura. Why dost thou, therefore, boast of thyself? Having won numerous battles, and acquired enormous wealth, and vanquished hostile hosts, men of true heroism speak not a word of their prowess. Fire burneth mutely, and mutely doth the sun shine. Mutely also doth the earth bear creatures, both mobile and immobile. The self-existent hath sanctioned such offices for the 4 orders that having recourse to them each may acquire wealth without being censurable. A Brahmana, having studied the Vedas, should perform sacrifices himself and officiate at the sacrifices of others. And a Kshatriya, depending upon the bow, should perform sacrifices himself but should never officiate at the sacrifices of others. And a Vaishya, having earned wealth, should cause the rites enjoined in the Vedas to be performed for himself. A Sudra should always wait upon and serve the other 3 orders. As regards those that live by practicing the profession of flowers and vendors of meat, they may earn wealth by expedients fraught with deceit and fraud. Always acting according to the dictates of the scriptures, the exalted sons of Pandu acquired the sovereignty of the whole earth, and they always act respectfully towards their superiors, even if the latter prove hostile to them. What Kshatriya is there that expressed delight at having obtained a kingdom by means of dice, like this wicked and shameless son of Dhritarashtra? Having acquired wealth in this way by deceit and fraud like a vendor of meat, who that is wise boast of it? In what single combat didst thou vanquish Dhananjaya, or Nakula, or Sadeva, although thou hast robbed them of their wealth? In what battle didst thou defeat Yudhishthira, or Bhima, that foremost of strong men? In what battle was Indraprastha conquered by thee? What thou hast done, however, O thou of wicked deeds, is to drag that princess to court while she was ill and had but one raiment on. Thou hast cut the mighty root, delicate as the sandal, of the Pandava tree. Actuated by desire of wealth, when thou madest the Pandavas act as slaves, rememberest thou what Vidura said? We see that men and others, even insects and ants, show forgiveness according to their power of endurance. The son of Pandu, however, is incapable of forgiving the sufferings of Draupadi. Surely, Dhananjaya cometh here for the destruction of the sons of Dhritarashtra. It is true, affecting great wisdom, thou art for making speeches, but will not Vibhatsu, that slayer of foes, exterminate us all. If it be gods, or Gandharvas, or Asuras, or Rakshasas, will Dhananjaya the son of Kunti desist to fight from panic? Inflamed with wrath upon whomsoever he will fall, even him he will overthrow like a tree under the weight of Garuda. Superior to thee in prowess, and bowmanship equal unto the Lord himself of the celestials, and in battle equal unto Vasudeva himself, who is there that would not praise Partha? Counteracting celestial weapons with celestial, and human weapons with human, what man is a match for Arjuna? Those acquainted with the scriptures declare that a disciple is no way inferior to a son, and it is for this that the son of Pandu is a favorite of Drona. Employ thou the means now which thou hadst adopted in the match at dice, the same means, viz., by which thou hadst subjugated Indraprastha, and the same means by which thou hadst dragged Krishna to the assembly. This thy wise uncle, fully conversant with the duties of the Kshatriya order, this deceitful gambler Sakuni, the prince of Gandhara, let him fight now. The Gandiva, however, doth not cast dice such as the Krita or the Dwapara, but it shooteth upon foes blazing and keen-edged shafts by myriads. The fierce arrows shot from the Gandiva, endued with great energy and furnished with vulturine wings, pierce even mountains. The destroyer of all, named Yama, and Vayu, and the horse-faced Agni, leave some remnant behind, but Dhananjaya, inflamed with wrath, never doth so. As thou hadst, aided by thy uncle, played a dice in the assembly, so do fight in this battle protected by Suvala's son. Let the preceptor, if he chooses fight, I shall not, however, fight with Dhananjaya. We are to fight with the king of the Matsyas, if indeed he cometh in the track of the kine. Indeed, Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 51. Bhishma said, Drona's son observeth well, and Kripa, too, observeth rightly. As for Kama, it is only out of regard for the duties of the Kshatriya order that he desireth to fight. No man of wisdom can blame the preceptor. I, however, am of opinion that fight we must, considering both the time and the place. Why should not that man be bewildered who hath 5 adversaries effulgent as 5 sons, who are heroic combatants and who have just emerged from adversity? Even those conversant with morality are bewildered in respect of their own interests. It is for this, O king, that I tell thee this, whether my words be acceptable to you or not. What Karna said unto thee was only for raising our, drooping, courage. As regards thyself, O preceptor's son, forgive everything. The business at hand is very grave. When the son of Kunti hath come, this is not the time for quarrel. Everything should now be forgiven by thyself and the preceptor Kripa. Like light in the sun, the mastery of all weapons doth reside in you. As beauty is never separated from Chandramadhavs, so are the Vedas and the Brahma weapon both established in you. It is often seen that the 4 Vedas dwell in one object and Kshatriya attributes in another. We have never heard of these 2 dwelling together in any other person than the preceptor of the Bharata race and his son. Even this is what I think. In the Vedantas, in the Puranas, and in old histories, who save Jamadagni, O king, would be Drona's superior. A combination of the Brahma weapon with the Vedas, this is never to be seen anywhere else. O preceptor's son, do thou forgive. This is not the time for disunion. Let all of us, uniting, fight with Indra's son who hath come. Of all the calamities that may befall an army that have been enumerated by men of wisdom, the worst is disunion among the leaders. Aswathaman said, O bull among men, these digest observations need not be uttered in our presence. The preceptor, however, filled with wrath, had spoken of Arjuna's virtues. The virtues of even an enemy should be admitted, while the faults of even one's preceptor may be pointed out. Therefore one should, to the best of his power, declare the merits of a son or a disciple. Duryodhana said, Let the preceptor grant his forgiveness and let peace be restored. If the preceptor be at one with us, whatever should be done, in view of the present emergency, would seem to have been already done. Vaisampayana continued, Then, O Bharata, Duryodhana assisted by Kama and Kripa, and the high-souled Bhishma pacified Drona. Drona said, Appeased I have already been at the words first spoken by Bhishma, the son of Santanu. Let such arrangements be made that Partha may not be able to approach Duryodhana in battle. And let such arrangements be made that King Duryodhana may not be captured by the foe, in consequence either of his rashness or want of judgment. Arjuna hath not, to be sure, revealed himself before the expiry of the term of exile. Nor will he pardon this act, of ours, today, having only recovered the kine. Let such arrangements, therefore, be made that he may not succeed in attacking Dhritarashtra's son and defeating our troops. Like myself, who am doubtful of the completion of period of exile, Duryodhana also had said so before. Bearing it in mind, it behoveth the son of Ganga to say what is true. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 52. Bhishma said, The wheel of time revolves with its divisions, viz., with kalas and kastas and muhurtas and days and fortnights and months and constellations and planets and seasons and years. In consequence of their fractional excesses and the deviations of also of the heavenly bodies, there is an increase of 2 months in every 5 years. It seems to me that calculating this wise, there would be an excess of 5 months and 12 nights in 13 years. Everything, therefore, that the sons of Pandu had promised, hath been exactly fulfilled by them. Knowing this to be certain, Vibhatsu hath made his appearance. All of them are high-souled and fully conversant with the meanings of the scriptures. How would they deviate from virtue that have Yudhishthira for their guide? The sons of Kunti do not yield to temptation. They have achieved a difficult feat. If they had coveted the possession of their kingdom by unfair means, then those descendants of the Kuru race would have sought to display their prowess at the time of the match at dice. Bound in bonds of virtue, they did not deviate from the duties of the Kshatriya order. He that will regard them to have behaved falsely will surely meet with defeat. The sons of Pritha would prefer death to falsehood. When the time, however, comes, those bulls among men, the Pandavas endued with energy like that of Sikra, would not give up what is theirs even if it is defended by the wielder himself of the thunderbolt. We shall have to oppose in battle the foremost of all wielders of weapons. Therefore, let such advantageous arrangements as have the sanction of the good and the honest be now made without loss of time, so that our possessions may not be appropriated by the foe. O King of Kings, O Kaurava, I have never seen a battle in which one of the parties could say, "We are sure to win." When a battle occurs, there must be victory or defeat, prosperity or adversity. Without doubt, a party to a battle must have either of the two. Therefore, O King of Kings, whether a battle be now proper or not, consistent with virtue or not, make thy arrangements soon, for the Dhananjaya is at hand. Duryodhana said, I will not, O grandsire, give back the Pandavas their kingdom. Let every preparation, therefore, for battle be made without delay. Bhishma said, Listen to what I regard as proper, if it pleases thee. I should always say what is for thy good, O Kaurava. Proceed thou towards the capital, without loss of time, taking with thee a fourth part of the army. And let another fourth march, escorting the kine. With half the troops we will fight the Pandava. Myself and Drona, and Karna and Aswathaman and Kripa will resolutely withstand Vibhatsu, or the king of the Matsyas, or Indra himself, if he approaches. Indeed, we will withstand any of these like the bank withstanding the surging sea. Vaisampayana continued, These words spoken by the high-souled Bhishma were acceptable to them, and the king of the Kauravas acted accordingly without delay. And having sent away the king and then the kine, Bhishma began to array the soldiers in order of battle. And addressing the preceptor, he said, O preceptor, stand thou in the center, and let Aswathaman stand on the left, and let the wise Kripa, son of Saradwata, defend the right wing, and let Karna of the Sudha caste, clad in mail, stand in the van. I will stand in the rear of the whole army, protecting it from that point. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 53. Vaisampayana said, After the Kauravas, O Bharata, had taken their stand in this order, Arjuna, filling the air with the rattle and din of his car, advanced quickly towards them. And the Kurus beheld his banatop and heard the rattle and din of his car, as also the twang of the Gandiva stretched repeatedly by him. And noting all this, and seeing that great car warrior the wielder of the Gandiva come, Drona spoke thus, That is the banatop of Partho which shineth at a distance, and this is the noise of his car, and that is the ape that roareth frightfully. Indeed, the ape striketh terror in the troops. And there stationed on that excellent car, the foremost of car warriors draweth that best of bows, the Gandiva, whose twang is as loud as the thunder. Behold, these two shafts coming together fall at my feet, and two others pass off barely touching my ears. Completing the period of exile and having achieved many wonderful feats, Partha saluteth me and whispereth in my ears. Endued with wisdom and beloved of his relatives, this Dhananjaya, the son of Pandu, is, indeed, beheld by us after a long time, blazing with beauty and grace. Possessed of car and arrows, furnished with handsome fences and quiver and conch and banner and coat of mail, decked with diadem and scimitar and bow, the son of Pritha shineth like the blazing Homa, fire surrounded with sacrificial ladles and fed with sacrificial butter. Vaisampayana continued, beholding the Kurus ready for battle, Arjuna addressing Matsya's son in words suitable to the occasion, said, O charioteer, restrain thou the steeds at such a point whence my arrows may reach the enemy. Meanwhile, let me see, where, in the midst of this army, is that vile wretch of the Kuru race. Disregarding all these, and singling out that vainest of princes, I will fall upon his head, for upon the defeat of that wretch the others will regard themselves as defeated. There standeth Drona, and there after him his son. And there are those great bowmen Bhishma and Kripa and Kama. I do not see, however, the king there. I suspect that anxious to save his life, he retreateth by the southern road, taking away with him the kine. Leaving this array of car warriors, proceed to the spot where Suddhodana is. There will I fight, O son of Virata, for there the battle will not be fruitless. Defeating him I will come back, taking away the kine. Vaisampayana continued, thus addressed, the son of Virata restrained the steeds with an effort and turned them by a pull at the bridle from the spot where those bulls of the Kuru race were, and urged them on towards the place where Duryodhana was. And as Arjuna went away leaving that thick array of cars, Kripa, guessing his intention, addressed his own comrades, saying, This Vibhatsu desireth not to take up his stand at a spot remote from the king. Let us quickly fall upon the flanks of the advancing hero. When inflamed with wrath, none else, unassisted, can encounter him in battle save the deity of 1,000 eyes, or Krishna the son of Devki. Of what use to us would the kine be, or this vast wealth also, if Duryodhana were to sink, like a boat, in the ocean of Partha? Meanwhile, Vibhatsu, having proceeded towards the division of the army, announced himself speedily by name, and covered the troops with his arrows thick as locusts. And covered with those countless shafts shot by Partha, the hostile warriors could not see anything, the earth itself and the sky becoming overwhelmed therewith. And the soldiers who had been ready for the fight were so confounded that none could even flee from the field. And beholding the light-handedness of Partha, they all applauded it mentally. And Arjuna then blew his conch, which always made the bristles of the foe stand erect. And twanging his best of bows, he urged the creatures on his flagstaff to roar more frightfully. And at the blare of his conch and the rattle of his car wheels, and the twang of the Gandiva, and the roar of the superhuman creatures stationed on his flagstaff, the earth itself began to tremble. And shaking their upraised tails and lowing together, the kine turned back, proceeding along the southern road. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 54. Vaisampayana said, having disorganized the hostile host by force and having recovered the kine, that foremost of bowmen, desirous of fighting again, proceeded towards Duryodhana. And beholding the kine running wild towards the city of the Matsyas, the foremost warriors of the Kurus regarded Kiritan to have already achieved success. And all of a sudden they fell upon Arjuna, who was advancing towards Duryodhana. And beholding their countless divisions firmly arrayed in order of battle with countless banners waving over them, that slayer of foes, addressing the son of the king of the Matsyas, said, Urge on, to the best of their speed by this road, these white steeds decked with golden bridles. Strive thou well, for I would approach this crowd of Kuru lions. Like an elephant desiring an encounter with another, the Suta's son of wicked soul eagerly desireth a battle with me. Take me, O prince, to him who hath grown so proud under the patronage of Duryodhana. Thus addressed, the son of Virata by means of those large steeds endued with the speed of the wind and furnished with golden armor, broke that array of cars and took the Pandava into the midst of the battlefield. And seeing this, those mighty car warriors, Chitrasena and Sangramajit and Satrusaha and Jaya, desirous of aiding Karna, rushed with arrows and long shafts towards the advancing hero of Bharata's race. Then that foremost of men, inflamed with wrath, began to consume by means of fiery arrows shot from his bow that array of cars belonging to those bulls among the Kurus, like a tremendous conflagration consuming a forest. Then, when the battle began to rage furiously, the Kuru hero, Vikarna, mounted on his car, approached that foremost of car warriors, Partha, the younger brother of Bhima, showering upon him terrible shafts thick and long. Then cutting Vikarna's bow furnished with a tough string and horns overlaid with gold, Arjuna cut off his flagstaff. And Vikarna, beholding his flagstaff cut off, speedily took to flight. And after Vikarna's flight, Satrantapa, unable to repress his ire, began to afflict Partha, that obstructor of foes and achiever of superhuman feats, by means of a perfect shower of arrows. And drowned, as it were, in the midst of the Kuru array, Arjuna, pierced by that mighty car warrior, King Satrantapa pierced the latter in return with 5 and then slew his car driver with 10 shafts, and pierced by that bull of the Bharata race with an arrow capable of cleaving the thickest coat of mail, Satrantapa fell dead on the field of battle, like a tree from a mountaintop torn up by the wind. And those brave bulls among men, mangled in battle by that braver bull among men, began to waver and tremble like mighty forests shaken by the violence of the wind that blows at the time of the universal dissolution. and struck in battle by Partha, the son of Vasva, those well-dressed heroes among men, those givers of wealth, endued with the energy of Vasva, defeated and deprived of life, began to measure their lengths on the ground, like full-grown Himalayan elephants clad in mails of black steel decked with gold. And like unto a raging fire consuming a forest at the close of summer, that foremost of men, wielding the Gandiva, ranged the field in all directions, slaying his foes in battle thus. And as the wind rangeth at will, scattering masses of clouds and fallen leaves in the season of spring, so did that foremost of car warriors Kiritan ranged in that battle, scattering all his foes before him. And soon slaying the red steeds yoked unto the car of Sangramajit, the brother of Vikatana's son, that hero decked in diadem and endued with great vigor, then cut off his antagonist's head by a crescent-shaped arrow. And when his brother was slain, Vikartana's son of the Sudha caste, mustering all his prowess, rushed at Arjuna, like a huge elephant with outstretched tusks, or like a tiger at a mighty bull. And the son of Vikarna quickly pierced the son of Pandu with 12 shafts, and all his steeds also in every part of their bodies, and Virata's son too in his hand. And rushing impetuously against Vikarna's son, who was suddenly advancing against him, Kiritan attacked him fiercely like Garuda of variegated plumage swooping down upon a snake. And both of them were foremost of bowmen, and both were endued with great strength, and both were capable of slaying foes. And seeing that an encounter was imminent between them, the Kauravas, anxious to witness it, stood aloof as lookers-on. And beholding the offender Karna, the son of Pandu, excited to fury, and glad also at having him, soon made him, his horses, his car, and car-driver invisible by means of a frightful shower of countless arrows. And the warriors of the Bharatas, headed by Bhishma, with their horses, elephants, and cars, pierced by Kiritan and rendered invisible by means of his shafts, their ranks also scattered and broken, began to wail aloud in grief. The illustrious and heroic Karna, however, counteracting with numberless arrows of his own those shafts by Arjuna's hand, soon burst forth in view with bow and arrows like a blazing fire. And then there arose the sound of loud clapping of hands, with the blare of conchs and trumpets and kettledrums made by the Kurus, while they applauded Vikartana's son, who filled the atmosphere with the sound of his bowstring flapping against his fence. And beholding Kiritan filling the air with the twang of Gandiva, and the upraised tail of the monkey that constituted his flag, and that terrible creature yelling furiously from the top of his flagstaff, Karna sent forth a loud roar. And afflicting by means of his shafts, Vikartana's son along with his steeds, car and car driver, Kiritan impetuously poured an arrowy shower on him, casting his eyes on the grandsire and Drona and Kripa. And Vikartana's son also poured upon Partha a heavy shower of arrows like a rain-charged cloud. And the diadem-decked Arjuna also covered Karna with a thick downpour of keen-edged shafts. And the two heroes stationed on their cars, creating clouds of keen-edged arrows in a combat carried on by means of countless shafts and weapons, appeared to the spectators like the sun and the moon covered by clouds, and the light-handed Karna, unable to bear the sight of the foe, pierced the 4 horses of the diadem-decked hero with whetted arrows, and then struck his car-driver with 3 shafts, and his flagstaff also with 3. Thus struck, that grinder of all adversaries in battle, that bull of the Kuru race, Jishnu wielding the Gandiva, like a lion awaked from slumber, furiously attacked Kama by means of straight-going arrows. And afflicted by the arrowy shower of Karna, that illustrious achiever of superhuman deeds soon displayed a thick shower of arrows in return. And he covered Karna's car with countless shafts like the sun covering the different worlds with rays. And like a lion attacked by an elephant, Arjuna, taking some keen crescent-shaped arrows from out of his quiver and drawing his bow to his ear, pierced the Sudha's son on every part of his body. And that grinder of foes pierced Karna's arms and thighs and head and forehead and neck and other principal parts of his body with whetted shafts endued with the impetuosity of the thunderbolt and shot from the Gandiva in battle. And mangled and afflicted by the arrows shot by Partha the son of Pandu, Vikartana's son, quitted the van of battle, and quickly took to flight, like one elephant vanquished by another. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 55. Vaisampayana said, after the son of Radha had fled from the field, other warriors headed by Duryodhana, one after another, fell upon the son of Pandu with their respective divisions. And like the shore withstanding the fury of the surging sea, that warrior withstood the rage of that countless host rushing towards him, arrayed in order of battle and showering clouds of arrows. And that foremost of car warriors, Kunti's son Vibhatsu of white steeds, rushed towards the foe, discharging celestial weapons all the while. Partha soon covered all the points of the horizon with countless arrows shot from the Gandiva, like the sun covering the whole earth with his rays. And amongst those that fought on cars and horses and elephants, and amongst the mail-clad foot soldiers, there was none that had on his body a space of even 2 fingers' breadth unwounded with sharp arrows. And for his dexterity in applying celestial weapons, and for the training of the steeds and the skill of Uttara, and for the coursing of his weapons, and his prowess and light-handedness, people began to regard Arjuna as the fire that blazeth forth during the time of the universal dissolution for consuming all created things. And none amongst the folk could cast his eyes on Arjuna, who shone like a blazing fire of great effulgence. And mingled by the arrows of Arjuna, the hostile ranks looked like newly risen clouds on the breast of a hill reflecting the solar rays, or like groves of Asoka trees resplendent with clusters of flowers. Indeed, afflicted by the arrows of Partha, the soldiers looked like these, or like a beautiful garland whose flowers gradually wither and drop away, and the all-pervading wind bore on its wings in the sky the torn flags and umbrellas of the hostile host. And affrighted at the havoc amongst their own ranks, the steeds fled in all directions, freed from their yokes by means of Partha's arrows and dragging after them broken portions of cars and elephants, struck on their ears and ribs and tusks and nether lips and other delicate parts of the body, began to drop down on the battlefield. And the earth, bestrewn in a short time with the corpses of elephants belonging to the Kauravas, looked like the sky overcast with masses of black clouds. And as that fire of blazing flames at the end of the Yuga consumeth all perishable things of the world, both mobile and immobile, so did Partha, O king, consumeth all foes in battle. And by the energy of his weapons and the twang of his bow, and the preternatural yells of the creatures stationed on his flagstaff, and the terrible roar of the monkey, and by the blast of his conch, that mighty grinder of foes, Vibhatsu, struck terror into the hearts of all the troops of Duryodhana. And the strength of every hostile warrior seemed, as it were, to be leveled to the dust at the very sight of Arjuna. And unwilling to commit the daring act of sin of slaying them that were defenseless, Arjuna suddenly fell back and attacked the army from behind by means of clouds of keen-edged arrows proceeding towards their aims like hawks let off by fowlers. And he soon covered the entire welkin with clusters of blood-drinking arrows. And as the infinite rays of the powerful sun, entering a small vessel, are contracted within it for want of space, so the countless shafts of Arjuna could not find space for their expansion even within the vast welkin. Foes were able to behold Arjuna's car, when near, only once, for immediately after, they were with their horses, sent to the other world. And as his arrows, unobstructed by the bodies of foes, always passed through them, so his car, unimpeded by hostile ranks, always passed through the latter. And, indeed, he began to toss about and agitate the hostile troops with great violence like the 1,000-headed Vasuki sporting in the great ocean. And as Kiritan incessantly shot his shafts, the noise of the bowstring, transcending every sound, was so loud that the like of it had never been heard before by created beings. And the elephants crowding the field, their bodies pierced with blazing arrows with small intervals between, looked like black clouds coruscated with solar rays. And ranging in all directions and shooting arrows right and left, Arjuna's bow was always to be seen drawn to a perfect circle. And the arrows of the wielder of the Gandiva never fell upon anything except the aim, even as the eye never dwelleth on anything that is not beautiful. And as the track of a herd of elephants marching through the forest is made of itself, so was the track made of itself for the car of Kiritan. And struck and mangled by Partha, the hostile warriors thought that, verily, Indra himself, desirous of Partha's victory, accompanied by all the immortals, is slaying us. And they also regarded Vijaya, who was making a terrible slaughter around, to be none else than Death himself, who, having assumed the form of Arjuna, was slaying all creatures. And the troops of the Kurus, struck by Partha, were so mangled and shattered that the scene looked like the achievement of Partha himself and could be compared with nothing else save what was observable in Partha's combats. And he severed the heads of foes, even as reapers cut off the tops of deciduous herbs. And the Kurus all lost their energy owing to the terror begot of Arjuna. And tossed and mangled by the Arjuna gale, the forest of Arjuna's foes reddened the earth with purple secretions. And the dust mixed with blood, uplifted by the wind, made the very rays of the sun redder still. And soon the sun-decked sky became so red that it looked very much like the evening. Indeed, the sun ceaseth to shed his rays as soon as he sets, but the son of Pandu ceased not to shoot his shafts. And that hero of inconceivable energy overwhelmed, by means of all celestial weapons, all the great bowmen of the enemy, although they were possessed of great prowess. And Arjuna then shot 73 arrows of sharp points at Drona, and 10 at Dasa, and 8 at Drona's son, and 12 at Dasasana, and 3 at Kripa, the son of Saradwat. And that slayer of foes pierced Bhishma, the son of Santanu, with arrows, and King Duryodhana with 100. And, lastly, he pierced Karna in the ear with a bearded shaft. And when that great bowman Karna, skilled in all weapons, was thus pierced, and his horses and car driver were all destroyed, the troops that supported him began to break. And beholding those soldiers break and give way, the son of Virata, desirous of knowing Partha's purpose, addressed him on the field of battle, and said, O Partha, standing on this beautiful car, with myself as charioteer, towards which division shall I go? For, commanded by thee, I would soon take thee thither. Arjuna replied, O Uttara, yonder auspicious warrior whom thou sayest cased in coat of tiger skin and stationed on his car furnished with a blue flag and drawn by red steeds, is Kripa. There is to be seen the van of Kripa's division. Take me thither. I shall show that great bowman my swift-handedness in archery. And that warrior whose flag beareth the device of an elegant waterpot worked in gold is the preceptor Drona, that foremost of all wielders of weapons. He is always an object of regard with me, as also with all bearers of arms. Do thou, therefore, circumambulate that great hero cheerfully. Let us bend our heads there, for that is the eternal virtue. If Drona strikes my body first, then I shall strike him, for then he will not be able to resent it. There, close to Drona, that warrior whose flag beareth the device of a bow, is the preceptor's son, the great car warrior Swathaman, who is always an object of regard with me as also with every bearer of arms. Do thou, therefore, stop again and again, while thou comest by his car. There, that warrior who stayeth on his car, cased in golden mail and surrounded by a third part of the army consisting of the most efficient troops, and whose flag beareth the device of an elephant in a ground of gold, is the illustrious King Duryodhana, the son of Dhritarashtra. O hero, take before him this thy car that is capable of grinding hostile cars. This king is difficult of being vanquished in battle and is capable of grinding all foes. He is regarded as the first of all Drona's disciples in lightness of hand. I shall, in battle, show him my superior swiftness in archery. There, that warrior whose flag beareth the device of a stout cord for binding elephants, is Karna, the son of Vikartana, already known to thee. When thou comest before that wicked son of Ratha, be thou very careful, for he always challengeth me to an encounter. And that warrior whose flag is blue and beareth the device of 5 stars with a sun in the center, and who endued with great energy stayeth on his car holding a huge bow in hand and wearing excellent fences, and over whose head is an umbrella of pure white, who standeth at the head of a multitudinous array of cars with various flags and banners like the sun in advance of masses of black clouds, and whose mail of gold looks bright as the sun or the moon, and who with his helmet of gold strikes terror into my heart, is Bhishma, the son of Santanu and the grandsire of us all. Entertained with regal splendor by Duryodhana, he is very partial and well affected towards that prince. Let him be approached last of all, for he may, even now, be an obstacle to me. While fighting with me, do thou carefully guide the steeds. Thus addressed by him, Virata's son, O king, guided Savyasakan's car with great alacrity towards the spot where Kripa stood anxious to fight. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 56. Vaisampayana said, and the ranks of those fierce bowmen, the Kurus, looked like masses of clouds in the rainy season drifting before a gentle wind. And close to those ranks of foot soldiers stood the enemy's horses ridden by terrible warriors. And there were also elephants of terrible mane, looking resplendent in beautiful armor, ridden by skilled combatants and urged on with iron crows and hooks. And, O king, mounted on a beautiful car, Sakra came there accompanied by the celestials, the Vishvas and Maruts. And crowded with gods, Yakshas, Gandharvas and Nagas, the firmament looked as resplendent as it does when bespangled with the planetary constellation in a cloudless night. And the celestials came there, each on his own car, desirous of beholding the efficacy of their weapons in human warfare, and for witnessing also the fierce and mighty combat that would take place when Bhishma and Arjuna would meet. And embellished with gems of every kind and capable of going everywhere at the will of the rider, the heavenly car of the Lord of the Celestials, whose roof was upheld by 100,000 pillars of gold with a central, one made entirely of jewels and gems, was conspicuous in the clear sky. And there appeared on the scene 33 gods with Vasva at their head, and many Gandharvas and Rakshasas and Nagas and Pitris, together with the great Rishis. And seated on the car of the Lord of the Celestials appeared the effulgent persons of King, Vasumanas and Valakshas and Supratardana, and Ashtaka and Sivi and Yayati and Nahusha and Gaya and Manu and Puru and Ragu and Banu and Krisaswa and Sagara and Nala. And there shone in a splendid array, each in its proper place, the cars of Agni and Isa and Soma and Varuna and Prajapati and Dhatri and Vidhatri and Kuvara and Yama and Alamvasha and Ugrasena and others, and of the Gandharv Tumbaru. And all the celestials and the Siddhas and all the foremost of sages came there to behold that encounter between Arjuna and the Kurus. And the sacred fragrance of celestial garlands filled the air like that of blossoming woods at the advent of spring. And the red and reddish umbrellas and robes and garlands and chamaras of the gods, as they were stationed there, looked exceedingly beautiful. And the dust of the earth soon disappeared, and celestial effulgence lit up everything. And redolent of divine perfumes, the breeze began to soothe the combatants. And the firmament seemed ablaze and exceedingly beautiful, decked with already arrived and arriving cars of handsome and various make, all illumined with diverse sorts of jewels, and brought thither by the foremost of the celestials. And surrounded by the celestials, and wearing a garland of lotuses and lilies, the powerful wielder of the thunderbolt looked exceedingly beautiful on his car. And the slayer of Vala, although he steadfastly gazed at his son on the field of battle, was not satiated with such gazing. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 57. Vaisampayana said, beholding the army of the Kurus arrayed in order of battle, that descended of the Kuru race, Partha, addressing Virata's son, said, Do thou proceed to the spot where Kripa, the son of Saradwat, is going by the southern side of that car whose flag is seen to bear the device of a golden altar. Vaisampayana continued, hearing these words of the Nanjaya, the son of Virata urged, without a moment's delay, those steeds of silvery hue decked in golden armor. And making them adopt, one after another, every kind of the swifter paces, he urged those fiery steeds resembling the moon in color. And versed in horse lore, Uttara, having approached the Kuru host, turned back those steeds endued with the speed of the wind. And skilled in guiding vehicles, the prince of Matsya, sometimes wheeling about, and sometimes proceeding in circular mazes, and sometimes turning to the left, began to be wilder the Kurus. And wheeling round, the intrepid and mighty son of Virata at last approached the car of Kripa, and stood confronting him. Then announcing his own name, Arjuna powerfully blew that best of conchs called Devdatta, of loud blare. And blown on the field of battle by the mighty Jishnu, the blare of that conch was heard like the splitting of a mountain. And seeing that the conch did not break into 100 fragments when blown by Arjuna, the Kurus with all their warriors began to applaud it highly. And having reached the very heavens, that sound coming back was heard even like the crash of the thunderbolt hurled by Magavat on the mountain breast. Thereupon that heroic and intrepid and mighty car warrior, Saradwat's son Kripa, endued with strength and prowess, waxing wroth at Arjuna, and unable to bear that sound and eager for fight, took up his own sea-begotten conch and blew it vehemently. And filling the three worlds with that sound, that foremost of car warriors took up a large bow and twanged the bowstring powerfully. And those mighty car warriors, equal unto two suns, standing opposed to each other, shone like two masses of autumnal clouds. Then Saradwat's son quickly pierced Partha, that slayer of hostile heroes, with 10 swift and whetted arrows capable of entering into the very vitals. And Pritha's son also, on his part, drawing that foremost of weapons, the Gandiva, celebrated over the world, shot innumerable iron arrows, all capable of penetrating into the very core of the body. Thereupon Kripa, by means of whetted shafts, cut into hundreds and thousands of fragments those blood-drinking arrows of Partha before they could come up. Then that mighty car warrior, Partha also, in wrath displaying various maneuvers, covered all sides with a shower of arrows. And covering the entire welkin with his shafts, that mighty warrior of immeasurable soul, the son of Pritha, enveloped Kripa with hundred of shafts. And sorely afflicted by those whetted arrows resembling flames of fire, Kripa waxed wroth and quickly afflicting the high-souled Partha of immeasurable prowess with 10,000 shafts, set up on the field of battle a loud roar. Then the heroic Arjuna quickly pierced the 4 steeds of his adversary with 4 fatal arrows shot from the Gandiva, sharp and straight, and furnished with golden wings. And pierced by means of those whetted arrows resembling flames of fire, those steeds suddenly reared themselves, and in consequence Kripa reeled off his place. And seeing Gautama thrown off his place, the slayer of hostile heroes, the descendant of the Kuru race, out of regard for his opponent's dignity, ceased to discharge his shafts at him. Then regaining his proper place, Gautama quickly pierced Savyasakan with 10 arrows furnished with feathers of the Kanka bird. Then with a crescent-shaped arrow of keen edge, Partha cut off Kripa's bow and leathern fences. And soon Partha cut off Kripa's coat of mail also by means of arrows capable of penetrating the very vitals, but he did not wound his person. And divested of his coat of mail, his body resembled that of a serpent which hath in season cast off its slough. And as soon as his bow had been cut off by Partha, Gautama took up another and stringed it in a trice. And strange to say, that bow of him was also cut off by Kunti's son, by means of straight shafts. And in this way that slayer of hostile heroes, the son of Pandu, cut off other bows as soon as they were taken up, one after another, by Saradwat's son. And when all his bows were thus cut off, that mighty hero hurled, from his car, at Pandu's son, a javelin like unto the blazing thunderbolt. Thereupon, as the gold-decked javelin came whizzing through the air with the flash of a meteor, Arjuna cut it off by means of 10 arrows. And beholding his dart thus cut off by the intelligent Arjuna, Kripa quickly took up another bow and almost simultaneously shot a number of crescent-shaped arrows. Partha, however, quickly cut them into fragments by means of 10 keen-edged shafts, and endued with great energy, the son of Pritha then, inflamed with wrath on the field of battle, discharged 3 and 10 arrows whetted on stone and resembling flames of fire. And with one of these he cut off the yoke of his adversary's car, and with 4 pierced his 4 steeds, and with the 6th he severed the head of his antagonist's car driver from off his body. And with 3 that mighty car warrior pierced, in that encounter, the triple bamboo pole of Kripa's car, and with 2, its wheels. And with the 12th arrow he cut off Kripa's flagstaff. And with the 13th Falguni, who was like Indra himself as if smiling in derision, pierced Kripa in the breast. Then with his bow cut off, his car broken, his steed slain, his car driver killed, Kripa leapt down and taking up a mace quickly hurled it at Arjuna. But that heavy and polished mace hurled by Kripa was sent back along its course, struck by means of Arjuna's arrows. And then the warriors of Kripa's division, desirous of rescuing wrathful son of Saradwat, encountered Partha from all sides and covered him with their arrows. Then the son of Virata, turning the steed to the left, began to perform circuitous evolution called Yamaka, and thus withstood all those warriors. And those illustrious bulls among men, taking Kripa with them who had been deprived of his car, led him away from the vicinity of Dhananya, the son of Kunti. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 58. Vaisampayana said, after Kripa had thus been taken away, the invincible Drona of red steeds, taking up his bow to which he had already stringed an arrow, rushed towards Arjuna of white steeds. And beholding at no great distance from him the preceptor advancing on his golden car, Arjuna, that foremost of victorious warriors, addressing Uttara, said, "Blessed be thou, O friend, carry me before that warrior on whose high bannertop is seen a golden altar resembling a long flame of fire and decked with numerous flags placed around, and whose car is drawn by steeds that are red and large, exceedingly handsome and highly trained, of face pleasant and of quiet mien, and like unto corals in color and with faces of coppery hue, for that warrior is Drona with whom I desire to fight. Of long arms, and endued with mighty energy, possessed of strength and beauty of person, celebrated over all the worlds for his prowess, resembling Usanus himself in intelligence and veracity in knowledge of morality, he is conversant with the 4 Vedas and devoted to the practice of Brahmacharya virtues. O friend, the use of the celestial weapons together with the mysteries of their withdrawal and the entire science of weapons always reside in him. Forgiveness, self-control, truth, abstention from injury, rectitude of conduct, these and countless other virtues always dwell in that regenerate one. I desire to fight with that highly blessed one on the field. Therefore, take me before the preceptor and carry me thither, O Uttara." Vaisampayana continued, thus addressed by Arjuna, Virata's son urged his steeds decked with gold towards the car of Bharadvaja's son. And Drona also rushed towards the impetuously advancing Partha, the son of Pandu, that foremost of car warriors, like an infuriate elephant rushing towards an infuriate compeer. And the son of Bharadvaja then blew his conch, whose blare resembled that of 100 trumpets. And at that sound the whole army became agitated like the sea in a tempest. And beholding those excellent steeds red in hue mingling in battle with Arjuna's steeds of swan-like whiteness endued with the speed of the mind, all the spectators were filled with wonder. And seeing on the field of battle those car warriors the preceptor Drona and his disciple Partha, both endued with prowess, both invincible, both well-trained, both possessed of great energy and great strength, engaged with each other, that mighty host of the Bharatas began to tremble frequently. And that mighty car warrior Partha, possessed of great prowess and filled with joy upon reaching Drona's car on his own, saluted the preceptor. And that slayer of hostile heroes, the mighty armed son of Kunti, then addressed Drona in an humble and sweet tone, saying, "Having completed our exile in the woods, we are now desirous of avenging our wrongs. Even invincible in battle, it doth not behove thee to be angry with us. O sinless one, I will not strike thee unless thou strikest me first. Even this is my intention. It behoveth thee to act as thou choosest." Thus addressed Drona discharged at him more than 20 arrows. But the light-handed Partha cut them off before they could reach him. And at this, the mighty Drona, displaying his lightness of hand in the use of weapons, covered Partha's car with 1,000 arrows. And desirous of angering Partha, that hero of immeasurable soul, then covered his steeds of silvery whiteness with arrows whetted on stone and winged with the feathers of the kanka bird. And when the battle between Drona and Kiritan thus commenced, both of them discharging in the encounter arrows of blazing splendor, both well known for their achievements, both equal to the wind itself in speed, both conversant with celestial weapons, and both endued with mighty energy, began shooting clouds of arrows to bewilder the royal Kshatriyas. And all the warriors that were assembled there were filled with wonder at sight of all this. And they all admired Drona, who quickly shot clouds of arrows, exclaiming, "Well done! Well done! Indeed, who else save Falguna is worthy of fighting with Drona in battle? Surely the duties of a Kshatriya are stern, for Arjuna fighteth with even his own preceptor." And it was thus that they who stood on the field of battle said unto one another. And inflamed with fire, those mighty armed heroes standing before other, and each incapable of overcoming the other, covered each other with arrowy showers. And Bharadvaja's son, waxing wroth, drew his large and unconquerable bow plated on the back with gold, and pierced Falguna with his arrows. And discharging at Arjuna's car innumerable whetted arrows possessed of solar effulgence, he entirely shrouded the light of the sun. And that great car warrior of mighty arms violently pierced Pritha's son with keen-edged shafts, even as the clouds shower upon a mountain. Then taking up that foremost of bows, the Gandiva, destructive of foes and capable of withstanding the greatest strain, the impetuous son of Pandu cheerfully discharged countless shafts of various kinds adorned with gold, and that powerful warrior also baffled in a moment Drona's arrowy shower by means of those shafts shot from his own bow. And at this the spectators wondered greatly. And the handsome Dhananjaya, the son of Pritha, ranging on his car, displayed his weapons on all sides at the same time. And the entire welkin, covered with his arrows, became one wide expanse of shade. And at this Drona become invisible like the sun enveloped in mist. And shrouded by those excellent arrows on all sides, Drona looked like a mountain on fire. And beholding his own car completely enveloped by the arrows of Pritha's son, Drona, that ornament of battle, bent his terrible and foremost of bows, whose noise was as loud as that of the clouds. And drawing that first of weapons, which was like unto a circle of fire, he discharged a cloud of keen-edged shafts. And then there were heard on the field loud sounds like the splitting of bamboos set on fire. And that warrior of immeasurable soul, shooting from his bow arrows furnished with golden wings, covered all sides, shrouding the very light of the sun. And those arrows, with knots well peeled off, and furnished with golden wings, looked like flocks of birds in the sky. And the arrows discharged by Drona from his bow, touching one another at the wings, appeared like one endless line in the sky. And those heroes, thus discharging their arrows decked with gold, seemed to cover the sky with showers of meteors. And furnished with feathers of the canker bird, those arrows looked like rows of cranes ranging in the autumnal sky. And the fierce and terrible encounter that took place between the illustrious Drona and Arjuna resembled that between Virata and Vasva of old. And discharging arrows at each other from bows drawn at their fullest stretch, they resembled two elephants assailing each other with their tusks. And those wrathful warriors, those ornaments of battle fighting strictly according to established usage, displayed in that conflict various celestial weapons in due order. Then that foremost of victorious men, Arjuna, by means of his keen shafts resisted the whetted arrows shot by that best of preceptors. And displaying before the spectators various weapons, that hero of terrible prowess covered the sky with various kinds of arrows. And beholding that tiger among men, Arjuna, endued with fierce energy and intent upon striking him, that foremost of warriors and best of preceptors, from affection, began to fight with him playfully by means of smooth and straight arrows. And Bharadvaja's son fought on with Falguna, resisting with his own the celestial weapons shot by the former. And the fight that took place between those enraged lions among men, incapable of bearing each other, was like unto encounter between the gods and the Danavas. And the son of Pandu repeatedly baffled with his own, the Aindra, the Vayavya, and the Agneya weapons that were shot by Drona. And discharging keen shafts, those mighty bowmen, by their arrowy showers completely covered the sky and made a wide expanse of shade. And then the arrows shot by Arjuna, falling on the bodies of hostile warriors, produced the crash of thunderbolt. O king, elephants, cars, and horses, bathed in blood, looked like Kansuka trees crowned with flowers. And in that encounter between Drona and Arjuna, beholding the field covered with arms decked with bangles, and gorgeously attired car warriors, and coats of mail variegated with gold, and with banners lying scattered all about, and with warriors slain by means of Partha's arrows, the Kuru host became panic-stricken. And shaking their bows capable of bearing much strain, those combatants began to shroud and weaken each other with their shafts. And, O bull of the Bharata race, the encounter that took place between Drona and Kunti's son was dreadful in the extreme and resembled that between Vali and Vasva. And staking their very lives, they began to pierce each other straight arrows shot from their fully stretched bowstrings. And a voice was heard in the sky applauding Drona, and saying, difficult is the feat performed by Drona, inasmuch as he fighteth with Arjuna, that grinder of foes, that warrior endued with mighty energy, of firm grasp, and invincible in battle, that conqueror of both celestials and Daityas, that foremost of all car warriors. And beholding Partha's infallibility, training, fleetness of hand, and the range also of Arjuna's arrows, Drona became amazed. And, O bull of the Bharata race, lifting up his excellent bow, the Gandiva, the unforbearing Partha, drew it now with one hand and now with another shot an arrowy shower. And beholding that shower resembling a flight of locusts, the spectators wondering applauded him, exclaiming, "Excellent! Excellent!" And so ceaselessly did he shoot his arrows that the very air was unable to penetrate the thick array. And the spectators could not perceive any interval between the taking up of the arrows and letting them off. And in that fierce encounter characterized by lightness of hand in the discharge of weapons, Partha began to shoot his arrows more quickly than before. And then all at once hundreds and thousands of straight arrows fell upon Drona's car. And, O bull of the Bharata race, beholding Drona completely covered by the wielder of the Gandiva with his arrows, the Kuru army set up exclamation of "Oh!" and "Alas!" And Maghavat, together with those Gandharvas and Apsaras that have come there, applauded the fleetness of Partha's hand. And that mighty car warrior, the preceptor's son, then resisted the Pandava with a mighty array of cars. And although enraged with Arjuna, yet Aswathaman mentally admired that feat of the high-souled son of Pritha. And waxing wroth, he rushed towards Partha, and discharged at him an arrowy shower like a heavy downpour by the cloud. And turning his steeds towards Drona's son, Partha gave Drona an opportunity to leave the field. And thereupon the latter, wounded in that terrible encounter, and his mail and banner gone, sped away by the aid of swift horses. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 59. Vaisampayana said, "Then, O mighty king, Drona's son rushed to an encounter with Arjuna in battle. And beholding his rush to the conflict like a hurricane, showering shafts like a rain-charged cloud, Pritha's son received him with a cloud of arrows. And terrible was the encounter between them, like that between the gods and the Danavas. And they shot arrows at each other like Virata and Vasva. And the welkin being enveloped on all sides with arrows, the sun was completely hidden, and the air itself was hushed. And, O conqueror of hostile cities, as they assailed and struck each other, loud sounds arose as of bamboos on fire. And, O king, Aswathaman's horses being sorely afflicted by Arjuna, they became bewildered and could not ascertain which way to go. And as Pritha's son ranged on the field, the powerful son of Drona, finding an opportunity, cut off the string of the Gandiva with an arrow furnished with a horseshoe head, and beholding that extraordinary feat of his, the celestials applauded him highly. And exclaiming, "Well done, well done!" Drona and Bhishma, and Karna, and the mighty warrior Kripa, all applauded that feat of his greatly. And the son of Drona, drawing his excellent bow, pierced with his shafts, furnished with the feathers of the Kanka bird, the breast of Partha, that bull among warriors. Thereupon, with a loud laughter, the mighty armed son of Pritha attached a strong and fresh string to Gandiva. And moistening his bowstring with the sweat that stood on his forehead resembling the crescent moon, Pritha's son advanced towards his adversary, even as an infuriated leader of a herd of elephants rusheth at another elephant. And the encounter that took place between those two matchless heroes on the field of battle was exceedingly fierce, and made the bristles of the spectators stand on their ends. And as those heroes endued with mighty energy fought on, the two mighty elephants, the Kurus beheld them with wonder. And those brave bulls among men assailed each other with arrows of snaky forms and resembling blazing fires. And as the couple of quivers belonging to the Pandava was inexhaustible, that hero was able to remain on the field immovable as a mountain. And as Aswathaman's arrows, in consequence of his ceaseless discharge in that conflict, were quickly exhausted, it was for this that Arjuna prevailed over his adversary. Then Karna, drawing his large bow with great force, twanged the bowstring. And thereupon arose loud exclamation of "Oh!" and "Alas!" And Pritha's son, casting his eyes towards the spot where that bow was twanged, beheld before him the son of Radha. And at that sight his wrath was greatly excited. And inflamed with ire and desirous of slaying Karna, that bull of the Kuru race stared at him with rolling eyes. And, O king, beholding Partha turn away from Aswathaman's side, the Kuru warriors discharged thousands of arrows on Arjuna. And the mighty armed Dhananjaya, that conqueror of foes, leaving Drona's son, all on a sudden rushed towards Karna. And rushing towards Karna, with eyes reddened in anger, the son of Kunti, desirous of a single combat with him, said these words. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 60. Arjuna said, "The time, O Karna, hath now come for making good thy loquacious boast in the midst of the assembly, viz., that there is none equal to thee in fight. Today, O Karna, contending with me in terrible conflict, thou shalt know thy own strength, and shalt no longer disregard others. Abandoning good breeding, thou hadst uttered many harsh words, but this that thou endeavorest to do is, I think, exceedingly difficult. Do thou now, O Ratha's son, contending with me in the sight of the Kurus, make good what thou hadst said before in disregard of myself. Thou who hadst witnessed Panchala's princess outraged by villains in the midst of the court, do thou now reap the fruit of that act of thine. Fettered by the bonds of morality before, I desisted from vengeance then. Behold now, O son of Ratha, the fruit of that wrath and conflict at hand. O wicked wight, we have suffered much misery in that forest for full 12 years. Reap thou today the fruits of our concentrated vengeance. Come, O Karna, cope with me in battle. Let these thy Kaurava warriors witness the conflict. Hearing these words, Karna replied, Do thou, O Partha, accomplish indeed what thou sayest in words. The world knows that thy words verily exceed thy deed. That thou hadst forborne formerly was owing to thy inability to do anything. If we witness thy prowess even now, we may acknowledge its truth. If thy past forbearance was due to thy having been bound by the bonds of morality, truly thou art equally bound now, although thou regardest thyself free. Having, as thou sayest, passed thy exile in the woods in strict accordance with thy pledge, and being therefore weakened by practicing an ascetic course of life, how canst thou desire a combat with me now? O Pritha's son, if Sakra himself fight on thy side, still I would feel no anxiety in putting forth my prowess. Thy wish, O son of Kunti, is about to be gratified. Do thou fight with me now, and behold my strength. Hearing this, Arjuna said, Even now, O Ratha's son, thou hadst fled from battle with me, and it is for this that thou livest, although thy younger brother hath been slain. What other person, save thee, having beheld his younger brother slain in battle, would himself fly from the field, and boast as thou dost, amid good and true men? Vaisampayana continued, having said these words unto Karna, the invincible Vibhatsu rushed at him and charged a volley of shafts capable of penetrating through a coat of mail. But that mighty Kar warrior, Karna, received with great alacrity that discharge with an arrowy shower of his own, heavy as the downpour of the clouds. And that fierce volley of arrows covered all sides and severally pierced the steeds and arms and leathern fences of the combatants. And incapable of putting up with that assault, Arjuna cut off the strings of Karna's quiver by means of a straight and sharp arrow. Thereupon, taking out from his quiver another arrow, Karna pierced the Pandava in the hand, at which the latter's hold of the bow was loosened. And then the mighty armed Partha cut off Karna's bow into fragments. And Karna replied by hurling a dart at his adversary, but Arjuna cut it off by means of his arrows. And then the warriors that followed the son of Ratha rushed in crowds at Arjuna, but Partha sent them all to the abode of Yama by means of arrows shot from the Gandiva. And Vibhatsu slew the steeds of Karna by means of sharp and tough arrows shot from the bowstring drawn to the ear, and deprived of life they dropped down on the ground. And taking another sharp and blazing arrow endued with great energy, the mighty son of Kunti pierced the breast of Kama. And that arrow, cleaving through his mail, penetrated into his body. And at this, Karna's vision was obscured and his senses left him. And regaining consciousness, he felt a great pain, and leaving the combat fled in a northerly direction. And at this, the mighty Kar warrior Arjuna and Uttara both began to address him contumely. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 61. Vaisampayana said, having defeated Vikartana's son, Arjuna said unto the son of Virata, Take me towards that division where yonder device of a golden palmyra is seen. There our grandfather, Santanu's son, like unto a celestial, waiteth, desirous of an encounter with me. Thereupon, beholding that mighty host thronged with cars and horses and elephants, Uttara, sorely pierced with arrows, said, O hero, I am no longer able to guide thy excellent steeds. My spirits droop and my mind is exceedingly bewildered. All the directions seem to be whirling before my eyes in consequence of the energy of the celestial weapons used by thee and the Kurus. I have been deprived of my senses by the stench of fat and blood and flesh. Beholding all this, from terror my mind is, as it were, cleft in twain. Never before had I beheld such a muster of horses in battle. And at the flapping of fences, and the blare of conchs, the leonine roars made by the warriors, and the shrieks of elephants, and the twang of the gandiva resembling the thunder, I have, O hero, been so stupefied that I have been deprived of both hearing and memory. And, O hero, beholding the incessantly drawing to a circle, and course of the conflict, the gandiva which resembleth a circle of fire, my sight faileth me, and my heart is rent asunder. And seeing thy fierce form in battle, like that of the wielder of the panacho while inflamed with wrath, and looking also at the terrible arrows shot by thee, I am filled with fear. I fail to see when thou takest up thy excellent arrows, when thou fixest them on the bowstring, and when thou lettest them off. And though all this is done before my eyes, yet, deprived of my senses, I do not see it. My spirits are drooping, and earth itself seems to be swimming before me. I have no strength to hold the whip and the reins. Hearing these words, Arjuna said, Do thou not fear. Assure thyself. Thou also hast, on the field of battle performed, O bull among men, wonderful feats. Blessed be thou, thou art a prince and born in the illustrious line of Matsyas. It behoveth thee not to feel dispirited in chastising thy foes. Therefore, O prince, stationed on my car, muster all thy fortitude and hold the reins of my steeds, O slayer of foes, when I once more become engaged in battle. Vyasa continued, having said this unto Virata's son, that best of men and foremost of car warriors, the mighty armed Arjuna, again addressed the son of Virata, saying, Take me without delay to the van of Bhishma's division. I will cut off his very bowstring in the battle. Thou shalt behold today the celestial weapons of blazing beauty, shot by me, look like flashes of lightning disporting amid the clouds in the sky. The Kauravas shall behold the gold-decked back of my gandiva today, and assembled together the foe shall dispute, saying, By which hand of his, the right or the left, doth he should? And I shall cause a dreadful river of death to flow today towards the other world with blood for its waters, and cars for its eddies, and elephants for its crocodiles. I shall today, with my straight arrows, extirpate the Kuru forest, having hands and feet and heads and backs and arms for the branches of its trees. Alone, bow in hand, vanquishing the Kuru host, 100 paths shall open before me like those of a forest in conflagration. Struck by me thou shalt today behold the Kuru army moving round and round like a wheel, unable to fly off the field. I shall show thee today my excellent training in arrows and weapons. Stay thou on my car firmly, whether the ground be smooth or uneven. I can pierce with my winged arrows even the mountain of Sumeru that stands touching the very heavens. I slew of old, at Indra's command, hundreds and thousands of Palomas and Kalakanjas in battle. I have obtained my firmness of grasp from Indra, and my lightness of hand from Brahman, and I have learnt various modes of fierce attack and defense amid crowds of foes from Prajapati. I vanquished, on the other side of the great ocean, 60,000 of car warriors, all fierce archers residing in Hiranyapura. Behold, now I defeat the multitudinous host of the Kurus like a tempest scattering a heap of cotton. With my fiery arrows I shall today set the Kuru forest to fire, having banners for its trees, the foot soldiers for its shrubs, and the car warriors for its beasts of prey. Like unto the wielder of the thunderbolt overthrowing the Danavas, alone I shall, with my straight arrows, bring down from the chambers of their cars the mighty warrior of the Kuru army stationed therein and struggling in the conflict to the best of their power. I have obtained from Rudra the Raudra, from Varuna the Varuna, from Agni the Agneya, from the god of wind the Vyava, and from Sakra the thunderbolt and other weapons. I shall certainly exterminate the fierce Dhartarashtra forest though protected by many leonine warriors. Therefore, O Virata's son, let thy fears be dispelled. Vyasa continued, thus assured by Savyasakan, the son of Virata penetrated into that fierce array of cars protected by Bhishma. The son of Ganga, however, of fierce deeds, cheerfully withstood the mighty armed hero advancing from desire of vanquishing the heroes in battle. Jishnu, then, confronting Bhishma, cut off his standard clean off at the roots by shooting a gold-decked arrow pierced by which it fell to the ground. And at this, for mighty warriors, Dusasana and Vikarna and Dusaha and Vivingsati, skilled in weapons and endued with great energy, and all decked with handsome garlands and ornaments, rushed towards that terrible bowman. And advancing towards Vibhatsu that fierce archer, these all encompassed him around. Then the heroic Dasasana pierced the son of Virata with a crescent-shaped arrow, and he pierced Arjuna with another arrow in the breast. And Jishnu, confronting Dasasana, cut off by means of a sharp-edged arrow furnished with vulturine wings his adversary's bow plated with gold, and then pierced his person in the breast by means of 5 arrows. And afflicted by the arrows of Partha, Dasasana fled, leaving the combat. Then Vikarna, the son of Dhritarashtra, pierced Arjuna, that slayer of hostile heroes, by means of sharp and straight arrows furnished with vulturine wings. But the son of Kunti within a moment hit him also in the forehead with straight shafts. And pierced by Arjuna, he fell down from his car. And at this, Dasa, supported by Vivangsati, covered Arjuna with a cloud of sharp arrows, impelled by the desire of rescuing his brother. Dhananjaya, however, without the least anxiety, pierced both of them almost at the same instant by means of a couple of keen-edged arrows, and then slew the steeds of both. And thereupon, both those sons of Dhritarashtra, deprived of their steeds and their bodies mingled, were taken away by the warrior behind them who had rushed forward with other cars. Then the unvanquished Vibhatsu, the mighty son of Kunti, decked with diadem and sure of aim, simultaneously attacked all sides with his arrows. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 62. Vaisampayana said, Then, O thou of the Bharata race, all the great car warriors of the Kurus, united together, began to assail Arjuna to the best of their might from all sides. But that hero of immeasurable soul completely covered all those mighty car warriors with clouds of arrows, even as the mist covereth the mountains. And the roars of huge elephants and conchs, mingling together, produced a loud uproar. And penetrating through the bodies of elephants and horses, as also through steel coats of mail, the arrows shot by Partha fell by thousands. And shooting shafts with the utmost celerity, the son of Pandu seemed in that contest to resemble the blazing sun of an autumnal midday. And afflicted with fear, the car warriors began to leap down from their cars, and the horse soldiers from horseback, while the foot soldiers began to fly in all directions. And loud was the clatter made by Arjuna's shafts as they cleft the coats of mail belonging to mighty warriors, made of steel, silver, and copper. And the field was soon covered with the corpses of warriors mounted on elephants and horses, all mangled by the shafts of Partha of great impetuosity like unto sighing snakes. And then it seemed as if Dhananjaya, bow in hand, was dancing on the field of battle. And sorely affrighted at the twang of the Gandiva resembling the noise of the thunder, many were the combatants that fled from that terrible conflict. And the field of battle was bestrewn with severed heads decked with turbans, earrings, and necklaces of gold, and the earth looked beautiful by being scattered all over with human trunks mangled by shafts, and arms having bows in their grasp and hands decked with ornaments. And, O bull of the Bharata race, in consequence of heads cut off by whetted shafts ceaselessly falling on the ground, it seemed as if a shower of stones fell from the sky. And that Partha of formidable prowess, displaying his fierceness, now ranged the field of battle, pouring the terrible fire of his wrath upon the sons of Dhritarashtra. And beholding the fierce prowess of Arjuna, who thus scorched the hostile host, the Kuru warriors, in the very presence of Duryodhana, became dispirited and ceased to fight. And, O Bharata, having struck terror into that host and routed those mighty car warriors, that foremost of victors, ranged on the field. And the son of Pandu then created on the field of battle a dreadful river of blood, with waving billows, like unto the river of death that is created by time at the end of the Yuga, having the disheveled hair of the dead and the dying for its floating moss and straw, with bows and arrows for its boats, fierce in the extreme and having flesh and animal juices for its mire. And coats of mail and turbans floated thick on its surface. And elephants constituted its alligators, and the cars its rafts. And marrow and fat and blood constituted its currents. And it was calculated to strike terror into the hearts of the spectators. And dreadful to behold, and fearful in the extreme, and resounding with the yells of ferocious beasts, keen-edged weapons constituted its crocodiles. And Rakshasas and other cannibals haunted it from one end to the other. And strings of pearls constituted its ripples, and various excellent ornaments, its bubbles. And having swarms of arrows for its fierce eddies and steeds for its tortoises, it was incapable of being crossed. And the mighty car warrior constituted its large island, and it resounded with the bleat of conchs and the sound of drums. And the river of blood that Partha created was incapable of being crossed. Indeed, so swift-handed was Arjuna that the spectators could not perceive any interval between his taking up an arrow and fixing it on the bowstring and letting it off by a stretch of the Gandiva. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 63. Vyasa said, Then while a great havoc was being made among the Kurus, Santanu's son, Bhishma, and grandsire of the Bharatas rushed at Arjuna, taking up an excellent bow adorned with gold, and many arrows also of keen points and capable of piercing into the very vitals of the foe and afflicting him sorely. And in consequence of a white umbrella being held over his head, that tiger among men looked beautiful like unto a hill at sunrise. And the son of Ganga, blowing his conch, cheered the sons of Dhritarashtra, and wheeling along his right came upon Vibhatsu and impeded his course. And that slayer of hostile heroes, the son of Kunti, beholding him approach, received him with a glad heart, like a hill receiving a rain-charged cloud. And Bhishma, endued with great energy, pierced Partha's flagstaff with 8 arrows. The arrows, reaching the flagstaff of Pandu's son, struck the blazing ape and those creatures also stationed in the banatop. And then the son of Pandu, with a mighty javelin of sharp edge cut of Bhishma's umbrella, which instantly fell on the ground. And then the light-handed son of Kunti struck his adversary's flagstaff also with many shafts, and then his steeds, and then the couple of drivers that protected Bhishma's flanks. And unable to bear this, Bhishma, though cognizant of the Pandavas' might, covered Dhananjaya with a powerful celestial weapon. And the son of Pandu, of immeasurable soul, hurling in return a celestial weapon at Bhishma, received that from Bhishma like a hill receiving a deep mass of clouds. And the encounter that took place between Partha and Bhishma was fierce, and the Kaurava warriors with their troops stood as lookers on. And in the conflict between Bhishma and the son of Pandu, shaft striking against shafts shone in the air like fireflies in the season of rains. And, O king, in consequence of Partha's shooting arrows with both his right and left hands, the bent Gandiva seemed like a continuous circle of fire. And the son of Kunti then covered Bhishma with hundreds of sharp and keen-edged arrows, like a cloud covering the mountain breast with its heavy downpour. And Bhishma, baffled with the own arrows that arrowy shower, like the bank resisting the swelling sea, and covered the son of Pandu in return. And those warriors, cut into 1,000 pieces in battle, fell fast in the vicinity of Falguna's car. And then there was a downpour, from the car of Pandu's son, of arrows furnished with golden wing, and raining through the sky like a flight of locusts. And Bhishma again repelled that arrowy shower with hundreds of whetted shafts shot by him. And then the Kauravas exclaimed, Excellent! Excellent! Indeed, Bhishma hath performed an exceedingly difficult feat inasmuch as he hath fought with Arjuna. Dhananjaya is mighty and youthful, and dexterous and swift of hand. Who else, save Bhishma, the son of Santanu, or Krishna, the son of Devki, or the mighty son of Bharadvaja, the foremost of preceptors, is able to bear the impetus of Partha in battle? And repelling weapons with weapons, those 2 bulls of the Bharata race, both endued with great might, fought on playfully and infatuated the eyes of all created beings. And those illustrious warriors ranged on the field of battle, using the celestials' weapons obtained from Prajapati and Indra, and Agni and the fierce Rudra, and Kuvara, and Varuna, and Yama, and Vayu. And all beings were greatly surprised, upon beholding those warriors engaged in combat. And they all exclaimed, Bravo Partha of long arms! Bravo Bhishma! Indeed, this application of celestial weapons that is being witnessed in the combat between Bhishma and Partha is rare among human beings. Vyasa continued, Thus raged that conflict with weapons between those warriors conversant with all weapons. And when that conflict of celestial weapons ceased, then commenced a conflict with arrows. And Jishnu, approaching his opponent, cut off with an arrow sharp like a razor the gold-decked bow of Bhishma. Within the twinkling of the eye, however, Bhishma, that mighty armed and great car warrior, took up another bow and stringed it. And inflamed with wrath, he showered upon Dhananjaya a cloud of arrows. And Arjuna, too, endued with great energy, rained upon Bhishma innumerable sharp-pointed and keen-edged arrows. And Bhishma also shot clouds of arrows upon Pandu's son. And conversant with celestial weapons and engaged in shooting and each other, arrows of keen points, no distinction, O king, could then be perceived between those illustrious warriors. And that mighty car warrior, Kunti's son, covered with a diadem, and the heroic son of Santanu, obscured the 10 directions with their arrows. And the Pandava covered Bhishma, and Bhishma also covered the Pandava, with clouds of shafts. And, O king, wonderful was this combat that took place in this world of men. And the heroic warriors that protected Bhishma's car, slain by the son of Pandu, fell prostrate, O monarch, beside the car of Kunti's son. And the feathery arrows of Svetavahana, shot from the Gandiva, fell in all directions as if with the object of making a wholesale slaughter of the foe. And issuing forth from his car those blazing arrows furnished with golden wings looked like rows of swans in the sky. And all the celestials with Indra, stationed in the firmament, gazed with wonder upon another celestial weapon hurled with great force by that wonderful archer Arjuna. And beholding that wonderful weapon of great beauty, the mighty Gandiva, Chitrasena, highly pleased, addressed the Lord of Celestials, saying, Behold these arrows shot by Partha coursing through the sky in one continuous line. Wonderful is the dexterity of Jishnu in evolving this celestial weapon. Human beings are incapable of shooting such a weapon, for it does not exist among men. How wonderful again is this concourse of mighty weapons existing from days of old. No interval can be perceived between his taking up the arrows, fixing them on the bowstring, and letting them off by stretching the Gandiva. The soldiers are incapable of even looking at the son of Pandu, who is like unto the midday sun blazing in the sky. So also none ventures to look at Bhishma, the son of Ganga. Both are famous for their achievements, and both are of fierce prowess. Both are equal in feats of heroism, and both are difficult of being vanquished in battle. Thus addressed by the Gandharva about that combat between Partha and Bhishma, the Lord of the Celestials, O Bharata, paid proper respect unto both by a shower of celestial flowers. Meanwhile, Bhishma, the son of Santanu, assailed Arjuna on the left side, while that drawer of the bow with either hands was on the point of piercing him. And at this, Vibhatsu, laughing aloud, cut off with an arrow of keen edge and furnished with vulturine wings, the bow of Bhishma, that hero of solar effulgence. And then Dhananjaya, the son of Kunti, pierced Bhishma in the breast with 10 shafts, although the latter was contending with all his prowess. And sorely afflicted with pain, Ganga's son of mighty arms and irresistible in battle, stood for a long time leaning on the pole of his car. And beholding him deprived of consciousness, the driver of his car steeds, calling to mind the instructions about protecting the warriors when in a swoon, led him away for safety. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 64. Vaisampayana said, after Bhishma had fled, leaving the van of battle, the illustrious son of Dhritarashtra hoisting high flag approached Arjuna, bow in hand and setting up a loud roar. And with a spear-headed shaft shot from his bow stretched to the ear, he pierced on the forehead of that terrible bowman of fierce prowess, Dhananjaya, ranging amidst the foes. And pierced with that keen shaft of golden point on the forehead, that hero of famous deeds looked resplendent, O king, like unto a beautiful hill with a single peak. And cut by that arrow, the warm lifeblood gushed out profusely from the wound. And the blood trickling down his body shone beautifully like a wreath of golden flowers. And struck by Duryodhana with the shaft, the swift-handed Arjuna of unfailing strength, swelling with rage, pierced the king in return, taking up arrows that were endued with the energy of snakes of virulent poison. And Duryodhana of formidable energy attacked Partha, and Partha also, that foremost of heroes, attacked Duryodhana. And it was that those foremost of men, both born in the race of Ajamata, struck each other alike in the combat. And then, seated on an infuriate elephant huge as a mountain and supported by 4 cars, Vikarna rushed against Jishnu, the son of Kunti. And beholding that huge elephant, advancing with speed, Dhananjaya struck him on the head between the temples with an iron arrow of great impetus shot from the bowstring stretched to the ear. And like the thunderbolt hurled by Indra splitting a mountain, that arrow furnished with vulturine wings, shot by Partha, penetrated, up to the very feathers, into the body of that elephant huge as hill. And sorely afflicted by the shaft, that lord of the elephant species began to tremble, and deprived of strength fell down on the ground in intense anguish, like the peak of mountain riven by thunder. And that best of elephants falling down on the earth, Vikarna suddenly alighting in great terror, ran back full 800 paces and descended on the car of Vivingsati. And having slain with that thunder-like arrow that elephant huge as a mighty hill and looking like a mass of clouds, the son of Pritha smote Duryodhana in the breast with another arrow of the same kind. And both the elephant and the king having thus been wounded, and Vikarna having broken and fled along with the supporters of the king's car, the other warriors, smitten with the arrows shot from the Gandiva, fled from the field in panic. And beholding the elephant slain by Partha, and all the other warriors running away, Duryodhana, the foremost of the Kurus, turning away his car, precipitately fled in that direction where Partha was not. And when Duryodhana was fast running away in alarm, pierced by that arrow and vomiting forth blood, Kiritan, still eager for battle and capable of enduring every enemy, thus censured him from wrath, sacrificing thy great fame and glory, why dost thou fly away, turning the back? Why are not those trumpet sounded now, as they were when thou hadst set out from thy kingdom? Lo, I am an obedient servant of Yudhishthira, myself being the third son of Pritha, standing here for battle. Turn back, show me thy face, O son of Dhritarashtra, and bear in thy mind the behavior of kings. The name Duryodhana bestowed on thee before is hereby rendered meaningless. When thou runnest away, leaving the battle, where is thy persistence in battle? Neither do I behold thy bodyguards. O Duryodhana, before nor behind. O foremost of men, fly thou away and save thy life which is dear from the hands of Pandu's son. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 65. Vyasa said, thus summoned to battle by the illustrious hero, Dhritarashtra's son turned back stung by those censures, like an infuriate and mighty elephant pricked by a hook. And stung by those reproaches and unable to bear them, that mighty and brave car warrior endued with great swiftness, turned back on his car, like a snake that is trampled underfoot. And beholding Duryodhana turn back with his wounds, Karna, that hero among men, decked with a golden necklace, stopped the king on the way and soothing him, himself proceeded along the north of Duryodhana's car to meet Partha in battle. And the mighty-armed Bhishma also, the son of Santanu, turning back his steeds decked with gold, enormous in size, and of tawny hue, rushed bow in hand, for protecting Duryodhana from Partha's hand. And Drona and Kripa and Vivingsati and Dusasana and others also, quickly turning back, rushed forward with speed with drawn bows and arrows fixed on the bowstrings, for protecting Duryodhana. And beholding those divisions advance towards him like the swelling surges of the ocean, Dhananjaya, the son of Pritha, quickly rushed at them like a crane rushing at a descending cloud. And with celestial weapons in their hands, they completely surrounded the son of Pritha and rained on him from all sides a perfect shower of shafts, like clouds showering on the mountain breast a heavy downpour of rain, and warding off with weapons, all the weapons of those bulls among the Kurus. The wielder of the Gandiva, who was capable of enduring all foes, evolved another irresistible weapon obtained from Indra, called Samahana. And entirely covering the cardinal and other directions with sharp and keen-edged arrows furnished with beautiful feathers, that mighty hero stupefied their senses with the twang of the Gandiva. And once more, taking up with both his hands that large conch of loud blare, Partha, that slayer of foes, blew it with force and filled the cardinal and other points, the whole earth and sky, with that noise. And those foremost of the Kuru heroes were all deprived of their senses by the sound of that conch blown by Partha. And all of them stood still, their bows, from which they were never separated, dropping down from their hands. And when the Kuru army became insensible, Partha, calling to mind the words of Uttara, addressed the son of the Matsya king, saying, O best of men, go thou among the Kurus, so long as they remain insensible, and bring away the white garments of Drona and Kripa, and the yellow and handsome ones of Karna, as also the blue ones of the king and Drona's son. Methinks, Bhishma is not stupefied, for he knoweth how to counteract this weapon of mine. So, pass thou on, keeping his steeds to thy left, for those that are sensible should thus be avoided. Hearing these words, the illustrious son of Matsya, giving up the reins of the steeds, jumped down from the car and taking off the garments of the warriors, came back to his place. And the son of Virata then urged the 4 handsome steeds with flanks adorned with golden armors. And those white steeds, urged on, took Arjuna away from the midst of battlefield and beyond the array of the infantry bearing standards in their hands. And Bhishma, beholding that best of men thus going away, struck him with arrows. And Partha, too, having slain Bhishma's steeds, pierced him with 10 shafts. And abandoning Bhishma on the field of battle, having first slain his car driver, Arjuna with a good-looking bow in hand came out of that multitude of cars, like the sun emerging from the clouds. And Dhritarashtra's son, that foremost of heroes among the Kurus, recovering his senses, saw the son of Pritha standing like the lord of the celestials, alone on the battlefield. And he said in hurry unto Bhishma, How hath this one escaped from thee? Do thou afflict him in such a way that he may not escape. And at this, Santanu's son, smiling, said unto him, Where had been this sense of thine, and where had been thy prowess too, when thou hadst been in a state of unconsciousness renouncing thy arrows and handsome bow? Vibhatsu is not addicted to the commission of atrocious deeds, nor is his soul inclined to sin. He renounceth not his principles even for the sake of the 3 worlds. It is for this only that all of us have not been slain in this battle. O thou foremost of Kuru heroes, go back to the city of the Kurus, and let Partha also go away, having conquered the kine. Do thou never foolishly throw away thy own good. Indeed, that which leadeth to one's welfare ought to be accomplished. Vaisampayana continued, having listened to the words of the grandsire that tended to his own welfare, the wrathful king Duryodhana, no longer eager for battle, drew a deep sigh and became silent. And reflecting that the advice of Bhishma was beneficial, and seeing that the Pandavas gaining in strength, the other warriors also, desirous of protecting Duryodhana, resolved to return. And beholding those foremost of Kuru heroes departing for their city, Dhananjaya, the son of Pritha, with a cheerful heart followed them for a while, desirous of addressing and worshipping them. And having worshipped the aged grandsire the son of Santanu, as also the preceptor Drona, and having saluted with beautiful arrows Drona's son and Kripa and other venerable ones among the Kurus, the son of Pritha broke into fragments Duryodhana's crown decked with precious gems, with another arrow. And having saluted all the venerable and brave warriors thus, he filled the 3 worlds with the twang of the Gandiva. And suddenly blowing his conch called Devdatta, the hero pierced the hearts of all his foes. And having humbled the hostile, he looked resplendent on his car decked with a handsome flag. And beholding the Kurus depart, Kiritan cheerfully said unto Matsya's son, Turn back thy steeds, thy kine have been recovered, the foe is going away, and do thou also return to thy city with a cheerful heart. And the celestials also, having witnessed that most wonderful encounter between Falguna and the Kurus, were highly delighted, and went to their respective abodes, reflecting upon Partha's feats. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 66. Vaisampayana said, having vanquished the Kurus in battle, that one with eyes like those of a bull brought back that profuse cattle wealth of Virata. And while the Dhritarashtra, after their rout, were going away, a large number of Kuru soldiers issuing out of the deep forest appeared with slow steps before Partha, their hearts afflicted with fear. And they stood before him with joined palms and with hair disheveled. And fatigued with hunger and thirst, arrived in a foreign land, insensible with terror, and confused in mind, they all bowed down unto the son of Pritha and said, We are thy slaves. Arjuna said, Welcome, blessed be ye. Go ye away. Ye have no cause of fear. I will not take the lives of them that are afflicted. Ye have my assurance of protection. Vaisampayana continued, hearing these words of assurance, the assembled warriors greeted him with benedictions and praise of his achievements and fame and wishing him long life. And the Kauravas were unable to confront Arjuna, while after routing the foe he proceeded towards the city of Virata, like an elephant with rent temples. And having routed the whole army of the Kuru like a violent wind scattering the clouds, that slayer of foes, Partha, regardfully addressing the prince of Matsya, said, It is known to thee alone, O child, that the sons of Pritha are all living with thy father. Do not eulogize them upon entering the city, for then the king of the Matsyas may hide himself in fear. On the other hand, entering the city, do thou proclaim in the presence of thy father that the deed is thy own, saying, By me hath the army of the Kurus been vanquished, and by me have the kine been recovered from the foe. Uttara said, The feat thou hast achieved is beyond my power. I do not possess the ability to achieve it. I shall not, however, O Savyasakan, discover thee to my father, as long as thou wilt not tell me to do it. Vaisampayana continued, having vanquished the hostile army and wrested the whole of the cattle wealth from the Kurus, Jishnu returned again to the cemetery, and having approached the same Sami tree stood there with body mangled by the arrows of the enemy. Then that terrible monkey blazing like fire ascended into the sky with those other creatures in the flagstaff. And the illusion created by Viswakarma melted away, and Uttara's own banner bearing the device of a lion was set up on the car again. And having replaced the arrows and quivers of those foremost of the Kuru princes, and also that other weapon, the Gandiva, which enhances the fierceness of a battle, the illustrious prince of Matsya set out for the city with a glad heart, having Kiritan as his charioteer. And having achieved an exceedingly mighty feat and slain the foe, Partha also, that slayer of foes, binding his hair into a braid as before, took the reins from Uttara's hands. And that illustrious hero entered the city of Virata, with a cheerful heart, rehabilitating himself as Vrahanala, the car driver of Uttara. Vaisampayana continued, when all the Kauravas, utterly routed and vanquished, set out in a dejected mood for Hastinapura, Falguna, on his way back, addressed Uttara, saying, O Prince, O hero of mighty arms, seeing the kine escorted in advance of us by the cowherds, we shall enter Virata's metropolis in the afternoon, having tended the steeds with drink and a bath. Let the cowherds, dispatched by thee, speedily repair to the city with the good news, and proclaim thy victory. Vaisampayana continued, agreeable to Arjuna's words, Uttara speedily ordered the messengers, saying, Go ye and proclaim the king's victory. The foe hath been routed, and the kine have been recovered. And the Matsya and the Bharata princes, having thus consulted together, reapproached the same Sami tree. And gratified with the victory they had won, and arrived at the foot of the Sami tree, they wore on their persons and took up on their car the ornaments and robes they had left there. And having vanquished the whole hostile army and recovered the whole of the wealth from the Kurus, the heroic son of Virata returned to the city with Vrahanala as his car driver. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 67. Vaisampayana said, having speedily recovered his wealth, Virata, owning a large army, entered his city with a cheerful heart, accompanied by the 4 Pandavas. And having vanquished the Trigartas in battle and recovered all the kine, that mighty monarch, along with the sons of Pritha, looked resplendent and blazed forth in beauty. And as the brave king, that enhancer of the joys of friends, was seated on his throne, all his subjects, headed by the Brahmanas, stood before him. And worshipped by them, the king of the Matsyas, at the head of his army, saluted the Brahmanas and his subjects in return and dismissed them cheerfully. And Virata, the king of the Matsyas, owning a large army, inquired after Uttara, saying, Where hath Uttara gone? And the women and the maidens of the palace and the other females living in the inner apartments joyfully said unto him, Our kine having been seized by the Kurus, Bhumanjaya, incensed at this, and from excess of bravery hath issued forth alone with only Vrahanala as his second, for vanquishing the 6 mighty car warriors, Bhishma the son of Santanu, and Kripa, and Karna, and Duryodhana, and Drona, and Drona's son, who have all come with the Kuru army. Vaisampayana continued, Then King Virata, hearing that his brave son had gone forth with only 1 car and with Vrahanala as his car driver, became filled with grief, and addressing his chief counselors, said, Without doubt, the Kauravas and other lords of earth, learning the defeat of the Trigartas, will never keep their ground. Therefore, let those of my warriors that have not been wounded by the Trigartas go out, accompanied by a mighty force, for the protection of Uttara. And saying this, the king speedily dispatched, for the sake of his son, horses and elephants and cars and a large number of foot soldiers, equipped and decked with various kinds of weapons and ornaments. And it was thus that Virata, the king of the Matsyas, owning a large army, quickly ordered out a large division consisting of 4 kinds of troops. And having done this, he said, Learn ye, without loss of time, whether the prince liveth still or not. I myself think that he who hath got a person of the neuter sex for his car driver is not alive. Vyasa continued, Then King Yudhishthira the Just smilingly said unto the afflicted King Virata, If, O monarch, Virhanala hath been his charioteer, the foe will never be able to take away thy kind today. Protected by that charioteer, thy son will be able to vanquish in battle all the lords of earth allied with the Kurus, indeed, even the gods and the Asuras and the Siddhas and the Yakshas together. Vyasa continued, Meanwhile, the swift-footed messengers dispatched by Uttara, having reached Virata's city, gave tidings of the victory. And the minister-in-chief then informed the king of everything, viz., the great victory that had been won, the defeat of the Kurus, and the expected arrival of Uttara. And he said, All the kind have been brought back, the Kurus have been defeated, and Uttara, that slayer of foes, is well with his car driver. Then Yudhishthira said, By good luck it is that the kind have been recovered and the Kurus routed. I do not, however, regard it strange that thy son should have vanquished the Kurus, for his victory is assured that hath Virhanala for his charioteer. Vyasa continued, Hearing of the victory of his son possessed of immeasurable might, King Virata became so glad that the bristles of his body stood erect. And having made presents of raiments unto the messengers, he ordered his ministers, saying, Let the highways be decorated with flags, and let all the gods and goddesses be worshipped with flowery offerings. And let princes and brave warriors, and musicians and harlots decked in ornaments, march out to receive my son. And let the bellman, speedily riding an intoxicated elephant, proclaim my victory at places where four roads meet. And let Uttara, too, in gorgeous attire and surrounded by virgins and chanters of eulogies, go forth to receive my son. Vyasa continued, Having listened to these words of the king, all the citizens with auspicious things in hand, and many amongst them with cymbals and trumpets and conchs, and beautiful women attired in gorgeous robes, and reciters of auspicious and sacred hymns, accompanied by encomiasts and minstrels, and drummers, and other kinds of musicians issued forth from the city of the mighty Virata to welcome Uttara of immeasurable prowess. And having dispatched troops and maidens and courtesans decked in ornaments, the wise king of the Matsyas cheerfully said these words, O Sarandri, fetch the dice. And, O Kanka, let the play commence. The son of Pandu replied, saying, We have heard it said that one whose heart is filled with joy should not play with a cunning gambler. I do not, therefore, dare gamble with thee that are so transported with joy. I am ever desirous of doing what is for thy good. Let the play, however, commence if it pleases thee. Virata said, My female slaves and kine, my gold and whatsoever other wealth I have, nothing of all this shall thou be able to protect today, even if I do not gamble. Kanka said in reply, O monarch, O bestower of honors, what business hast thou with gamble which is attended with numerous evils? Gambling is fraught with many evils, it should, therefore, be shunned. Thou mayst have seen, or at least heard of Yudhishthira, the son of Pandu. He lost his extensive and prosperous kingdom and his godlike brothers at dice. For this, I am averse to gambling. But if thou likest, O king, I will play. Vyasa continued, While the play was going on, Matsya said unto the son of Pandu, Lo, the Kauravas that are so formidable have been vanquished in battle by my son. Upon this, the illustrious King Yudhishthira said, Why should not he conquer that hath Virhanala for his charioteer? Thus addressed, King Matsya became angry and said unto Pandu's son, Thou wretch of a Brahmana, dost thou compare one of the neuter sex with my son? Hast thou no knowledge of what is proper and what improper for one to say? Without doubt, thou disregardest me. Why should not my son vanquish all those with Bhishma and Drona as their leaders? O Brahmana, for friendship only I pardon thee this thy offense. Thou must not, however, say so again if thou wishest to live. Yudhishthira said, There were Bhishma and Drona's son and the son of Vikartana and Kripa and King Duryodhana and other royal and mighty car warriors are assembled, or there where Indra himself is surrounded by the Maruts, what other person than Virhanala can fight, encountering them all? None hath been, none will be, his equal in strength of arms. Indeed, it is Virhanala only whose heart is filled with joy at sight of a terrible conflict. It is he who had vanquished the celestials and the Asuras and human beings fighting together. With such a one for his ally, why should not thy son conquer the foe? Virata said, repeatedly forbidden by me, thou dost not yet restrain thy tongue. If there is none to punish, no one would practice virtue. Vyasa continued, saying this, the king inflamed with anger forcibly struck Yudhishthira in the face with a dice, and reproached him angrily, saying, let it not occur again. And having been violently struck, blood began to flow from his nose. But the son of Pritha held it in his hands before it fell on the ground. And the virtuous Yudhishthira then glanced at Draupadi, who was standing by his side. Ever obedient to the wishes of her lord, the faultless Draupadi, understanding his meaning, and bringing a golden vessel filled with water, received the blood that flowed from his nose. Meanwhile, Uttara, entertained with sweet perfumes of diverse kinds and decked with floral chaplets, slowly entered the city, received with respect by the citizens, the women, and the people of the provinces. And approaching the gate of the palace, he sent the news of his arrival to his father. And the porter then, approaching the king, said, thy son Uttara waiteth at the gate with Vrhanala as his companion. And the Matsya king, with a cheerful heart, said unto him, do thou usher both, as I am very anxious to see them. Then Yudhishthira, the king of Kurus, gently whispered unto the ears of the warder, let Uttara enter alone, Vrhanala must not come in. Such is the vow of that hero of mighty arms, that whoever causeth a wound on my person or sheddeth my blood except in battle, shall not live. Inflamed with rage, he will never bear patiently to see me bleeding, but will slay Virata even now with his counselors and troops and steeds. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 68. Vyasa said, then Bhumanjaya, the eldest son of the king, entered, and having worshipped the feet of his father approached Kanka. And he beheld Kanka covered with blood, and seated on the ground at one end of the court, and waited upon by the Sarandri. And seeing this, Uttara asked his father in a hurry, saying, by whom, O king, hath this one been struck? By whom hath this sinful act been perpetrated? Virata said, this crooked Brahmana hath been struck by me. He deserveth even more than this. When I was praising thee, he praised that person of the third sex. Uttara said, thou hast, O king, committed an improper act. Do thou speedily propitiate him, so that the virulent poison of a Brahmana's curse may not consume thee to thy roots. Vyasa continued, having heard the words of his son, Virata, that enhancer of the limits of his kingdom, began to soothe Kunti's son, who was like unto a fire hid in ashes, for obtaining his forgiveness. And unto the king desirous of obtaining his pardon the Pandava replied, O king, I have long ago forgiven it. Anger I have none. Had this blood from my nostrils fallen on the ground, then, without doubt, thou, O monarch, wouldst have been destroyed with thy kingdom. I do not, however, blame thee, O king, for having struck an innocent person. For, O king, they that are powerful generally act with unreasoning severity. Vyasa continued, when the bleeding had stopped, Vrhanala entered the council room, and having saluted both Virata and Kanka, stood silent. And the king, having appeased the chief of the Kurus, began to praise, and Savyasakan's hearing, Uttara, who had returned from the battle. And the king said, O enhancer of the joys of Kakaya's princess, in thee have I truly a son. I never had nor shall have a son that is equal to thee. How, indeed, couldst thou, O child, encounter that Karna who leaveth not a single mark unhit amongst even 1,000 that he may aim at all at once? How couldst thou, O child, encounter that Bhishma who hath no equal in the whole world of men? How also couldst thou, O child, encounter Drona, that foremost of all wielders of weapons, that preceptor of the Vrishnis and Kauravas, twice born one who may be regarded as the preceptor of all the Kshatriyas? How couldst thou meet in battle the celebrated Aswathaman? How couldst thou, O child, encounter that Duryodhana, the prince who is capable of piercing even a mountain with his mighty arrows? My foes have all been thrashed. A delicious breeze seems to blow around me. And since thou hast recovered in battle the whole of my wealth that had been seized by the Kurus, it seems that all those mighty warriors were struck with panic. Without doubt, thou, O bull amongst men, hast routed the foe and snatched away from them my wealth of kine, like his prey from a tiger. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 69. Uttara said, "The kine have not been recovered by me, nor have the foe been vanquished by me. All that hath been accomplished by the son of a deity, capable of striking like a thunderbolt, that youth of celestial origin, beholding me running away in fear, stopped me and himself mounted on my car. It was by him that the kine have been recovered and the Kauravas vanquished. The deed, O father, is that hero's and not mine. It was he that repulsed with arrows Kripa and Drona's son of powerful energy, and the Suta's son and Bhishma. That mighty hero then spoke unto the affrighted Prince Duryodhana, who was running away like the leader of a head of elephants, these words, O prince of the Kuru race, I do not see that thou art safe by any means even at Hastinapura. Protect thy life by putting forth thy might. Thou shalt not escape me by flight. Therefore, make up thy mind for fight. If victorious, the sovereignty of the earth will be thine, or if slain, heaven itself will be thine." Thus addressed, King Duryodhana that tiger among men, surrounded by his counselors, sighing on his car like a snake turned back, showered arrows endued with the speed and force of thunderbolts. Beholding all this, venerable sire, my thighs began to quake. Then that celestial youth pierced with arrows the Kuru army consisting of leonine warriors. And having pierced and afflicted that crowd of cars, that youth, stout as the lion, laughed at them and robbed them of their clothes and attires. Indeed, the 6 great car warriors of the Kurus were vanquished by that hero alone, even like herds of animals ranging in the forest by a single tiger in rage. Virata said, "Where is that mighty armed and famous youth of celestial origin, that hero who recovered in battle my wealth that had been seized by the Kurus? I am anxious to behold and worship that mighty warrior of celestial origin who hath saved thee and my kind also." Uttara replied, "The mighty son of a deity disappeared there and then. I think, however, that he will show himself either tomorrow or the day after." Vyasa continued, "Virata, that owner of a large army, remained ignorant of the son of Pandu who was thus described unto him by Uttara, and who was living in the palace in disguise. And permitted by the high-souled Virata, Partha presented with his own hands the garments he had brought unto Virata's daughter. And the beautiful Uttara, obtaining those new and costly clothes of diverse kinds, became highly glad, along with the son of the Matsya king." Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 70. Vyasa said, "Then, on the 3rd day, attired in white robes after a bath, and decked in ornaments of all kinds, those great car warriors, the 5 Pandava brothers, having accomplished their row, and with Yudhishthira at their head, looked resplendent as they entered the palace gate like 5 intoxicated elephants. And having entered the council hall of Virata, they took their seats on the thrones reserved for kings, and shone brilliantly like fires on the sacrificial altar. And after Pandavas had taken their seats, Virata, that lord of earth, came there for holding his council and discharging other royal offices. And beholding the illustrious Pandavas blazing like fires, the king reflected for a moment. And them, filled with wrath, the Matsya king spoke unto Kanka seated there like a celestial and looking like the lord of celestials surrounded by the Maruts. And he said, "A player at dice thou wert employed by me as a courtier. How couldst thou occupy the royal seat thus attired in handsome robes and ornaments?" Vyasa continued, "Hearing these words of Virata, O king, and desirous of jesting with him, Arjuna smilingly said in reply, This person, O king, deserveth to occupy the same seat with Indra himself. Devoted to the Brahmanas, acquainted with the Vedas, indifferent to luxury and carnal enjoyments, habitually performing sacrifices, steady in vows, this one, indeed, is the very embodiment of virtue, the foremost of all persons endued with energy and superior to every body on earth in intelligence, devoted to asceticism, he is conversant with various weapons. No other person among the mobile and immobile creatures of the 3 worlds possesseth or will ever possess such knowledge of weapons. And there is none even amongst the gods, or asuras, or men, or rakshasas, or gandharvas, or yaksha chiefs, or kinnaras or mighty uragas, who is like him. Endued with great foresight and energy, beloved by the citizens and inhabitants of the provinces, he is the mightiest of car warriors amongst the sons of Pandu. A performer of sacrifices, devoted to morality, and of subdued passions, like unto a great rishi, this royal sage is celebrated over all the worlds. Possessed of great strength and great intelligence, able and truthful, he hath all his senses under complete control. Equal unto Indra in wealth and Kuvera in hoarding, he is the protector of the worlds like unto Manu himself of mighty prowess. Endued with great might, he is even such. Kind unto all creatures, he is no other than the bull of the Kuru race, King Yudhishthira the Just. The achievements of this king resemble the sun himself of blazing effulgence. And his fame hath traveled in all directions like the rays of that luminary. And like the rays following the risen sun of blazing effulgence, 10,000 swift elephants followed him, O king, when he dwelt among the Kurus. And, O king, 30,000 cars decked in gold and drawn by the best steeds, also used to follow him then. And full 800 bards adorned with earrings set with shining gems, and accompanied by minstrels, recited his praises in those days, like the rishis adorning Indra. And, O king, the Kauravas and other lords of earth always waited upon him like slaves, as the celestials upon Kuvera. This eminent king, resembling the bright-rayed sun, made all lords of earth pay tribute unto him like persons of the agricultural class. And 88,000 of high-souled Snatakas depended for their subsistence upon this king practicing excellent vows. This illustrious lord protected the aged and the helpless, the maimed and the blind, as his sons, and he ruled over his subjects virtuously. Steady in morality and self-control, capable of restraining his anger, bountiful, devoted to the Brahmanas, and truthful, this one is the son of Pandu. The prosperity and prowess of this one afflict King Suyoddana with his followers, including Kama and Suvala's son. And, O Lord of men, the virtues of this one are incapable of being enumerated. This son of Pandu is devoted to morality and always abstains from injury. Possessed of such attributes, doth not this bull among kings, this son of Pandu, deserve, O monarch, to occupy a royal seat? Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 71. Virata said, if this one, indeed, be the Kuru king Yudhishthira the son of Kunti, which amongst these is his brother Arjuna, and which, the mighty Bhima? Which of these is Nakula, and which Sadeva, and where is the celebrated Draupadi? After their defeat at Dice, the sons of Pritha have not been heard of by anyone. Arjuna said, even this one, O king, who is called Vallabha and is thy cook, is that Bhima of mighty arms and terrible prowess and furious impetus. It was he who slew the furious Rakshasas on the mountains of Gandhamadana, and procured for Krishna celestial flowers of great fragrance. Even he is that Gandharv, who slew the Kachaka of wicked soul, and it was he who killed tigers and bears and boars in the inner apartment of thy palace. He who had been the keeper of thy horse is that slayer of foes called Nakula, and this one is Sadeva, the keeper of thy kine. Both these sons of Madri are great car warriors, possessed of great fame and beauty of person. These two bulls of the Bharata race, attired in handsome robes and decked in excellent ornaments, are a match for 1,000 great car warriors. And even this lady of eyes like lotus petals and slender waist and sweet smiles is Draupada's daughter, thy wife Sarandri, for whose sake, O king, the Kichakas were slain. I am, O king, Arjuna who, it is evident, thou hast heard, is that son of Pritha, who is Bhima's junior and the senior of the twins. We have, O king, happily passed in thy abode the period of non-discovery, like infants in the womb. Vaisampayana continued, after Arjuna had pointed out those heroes the 5 Pandavas, the son of Virata then spoke of Arjuna's prowess. And Uttara once again identified the sons of Pritha. And the prince said, that one whose complexion is bright like that of pure gold, who is stout like a full-grown lion, whose nose is so prominent, whose eyes are large and expansive, and whose face is broad and of coppery hue, is the king of the Kurus. And behold, that one whose tread is like that of an infuriate elephant, whose complexion is like that of heated gold, whose shoulders are broad and expanded, and whose arms are long and thick, is Vrkodara. And he who stands by his side, that youth of darkish hue, who is like unto a leader of a herd of elephants, whose shoulders are broad like those of a lion, whose tread is like that of a mighty elephant, and whose eyes are large and expansive like lotus leaves, is Arjuna that foremost of bowmen. All lo, close to the king, are those foremost of men, the twins, like unto Vishnu and Indra, and who have no equals, in the world of men, in beauty, might, and behavior. And close by them, behold, standeth Krishna, beautiful as gold, like unto the very embodiment of light, possessing the complexion of the blue lotus, like unto a celestial damsel, and resembling the living embodiment of Lakshmi herself. Vaisampayana continued, Then Virata's son began to describe the prowess of Arjuna, saying, Even this one is he that slew the foe, like unto a lion devastating a flock of deer. Even he ranged through crowds of hostile cars, slaying their best of car warriors. By him was slain a huge, infuriate elephant by means of a single arrow. Pierced by him, that huge beast having its flanks adorned with an armor of gold, fell down piercing the earth with his tusks. By him have the kine been recovered and the Kauravas vanquished in battle. My ears have been deafened by the blare of his conch. It was by this hero of fierce deeds that Bhishma and Drona, along with Duryodhana, were vanquished. That achievement is his and not mine. Vaisampayana continued, hearing these words of his, the mighty king of the Matsyas, considering himself guilty of having offended Yudhishthira, said unto Uttara in reply, I think the time hath come for me to propitiate the sons of Pandu. And, if thou likest, I shall bestow my daughter Uttara upon Arjuna. Uttara said, Worthy of our adorations and worship and respect, the time hath come for worshipping the illustrious sons of Pandu who deserve to be worshipped by us. Virata said, When brought under the foe's subjection in battle, it was Bhimasena that rescued me. My kine also have been recovered by Arjuna. It is through the might of their arms that we have obtained victory in battle. Such being the case, all of us, with our counselors, shall propitiate Yudhishthira the son of Kunti. Blessed be thou, with all thy brothers, O bull among the sons of Pandu. If, O king, we have ever said or done anything in ignorance to offend thee, it behoveth thee to forgive us. The son of Pandu is virtuous. Vaisampayana continued, Then the high-souled Virata, delighted greatly, approached King Yudhishthira and made an alliance with him, and offered him his whole kingdom together with the scepter and treasury and metropolis. And addressing all the Pandavas, and especially the Nanjaya, the mighty king of the Matsyas repeatedly said, By good luck it is that I see you. And having again and again embraced Yudhishthira and Bhima and the sons of Mandri, and smelt their heads, Virata, that owner of a large army, was not satiated with gazing at them. And being highly pleased, he said unto King Yudhishthira, By good luck it is that I see you safe from woods. By good luck it is that ye have accomplished with difficulty the period of exile, undiscovered by those wicked whites. I make over my entire kingdom to the sons of Pritha, and what else I have. Let the sons of Pandu accept these without the slightest hesitation. And let the Nanjaya, called also Savyasakan, accept the hand of Uttara, for that best of men is fit to be her lord. Thus addressed, King Yudhishthira the just cast a look upon the Nanjaya, the son of Pritha. And looked at by his brother, Arjuna said unto the Matsya king, O monarch, I accept thy daughter as my daughter-in-law. An alliance of this kind between the Matsya and the Bharatas is, indeed, desirable. Mahabharata, Book 4, Section 72. Virata said, Why, O best among the Pandavas, dost thou not wish to accept as wife this my daughter that I bestow upon thee? Arjuna said, Residing in thy inner apartments, I had occasion always to behold thy daughter, and she too, alone or in company trusted me as her father. Well versed in singing and dancing, I was liked and regarded by her, and, indeed, thy daughter always regardeth me as her protector. O king, I lived for 1 whole year with her though she had attained the age of puberty. Under these circumstances, thyself or other men may not without reason entertain suspicions against her or me. Therefore, O king, myself who am pure, and have my senses under control, beg to thee, O monarch, thy daughter as my daughter-in-law. Thus do I attest her purity. There is no difference between a daughter-in-law and a daughter, as also between a son and son's own self. By adopting this course, therefore, her purity will be proved. I am afraid of slanderous and false accusations. I accept, therefore, O king, thy daughter Uttara as my daughter-in-law. Surpassing all in knowledge of weapons, resembling a celestial youth in beauty, my son, the mighty armed Abhimanyu, is the favorite nephew of Vasudeva, the wielder of the discus. He, O king, is fit to be thy son-in-law and the husband of thy daughter. Virata said, "It behoveth the best of the Kurus, Dhananjaya, the son of Kunti, who is so virtuous and wise, to say this. O son of Pritha, do thou carry out what thou thinkest should be done after this. He that hath Arjuna for the father of his son-in-law hath all his desires gratified." Vaisampayana continued, "The monarch having said this, Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, gave his assent to what was thus agreed upon between the Matsya king and Arjuna. And, O Bharata, the son of Kunti sent invitations to Vasudeva and to all his friends and relatives, and Virata also did the same. And then, after the expiry of the 13th year, the 5 Pandavas took up their abode in one of Virata's towns called Upaplavya, and Vibhatsu, the son of Pandu, brought over Abhimanyu and Janadana, and also many people of the Dasara race from the Anarta country. And the king of Kasi, and also Saivya, being very friendly to Yudhishthira, arrived there, each accompanied by an Akshahini of troops. And the mighty Drupada, also with the heroic sons of Draupadi and the unvanquished Sikandin, and that foremost of wielder of weapons, the invincible Drishtadyumna, came there with another Akshahini of troops. And all the kings that came were not only lords of Akshahini, but performers of sacrifices with gifts in profusion to Brahmanas, conversant with the Vedas, endued with heroism, and ready to die in battle. And beholding them arrived, that foremost of virtuous men, the king of the Matsyas, adored them duly, and entertained their troops and servants and carriers of burdens. And he was highly pleased to bestow his daughter upon Abhimanyu. And after the kings had come there from different parts of the country, there came Vasudeva decked in floral garlands, and Halayuda, and Kritavarman, the son of Hridika, and Yuyudana, the son of Satyaki, and Anadristi, and Akrura, and Samva, and Nisatha. And these repressors of foes came there bringing with them Abhimanyu and his mother. And Indrasena and others, having lived at Dvarka for 1 whole year, came there, bringing with them the well-adorned cars of the Pandavas. And there came also 10,000 elephants and 10,000 cars, and 100 millions of horses, and 100 billions of foot soldiers, and innumerable Vrishni and Andhaka and Bhoja warriors of great energy, in the train of that tiger among the Vrishnis, Vasudeva of great effulgence. And Krishna gave unto each of the illustrious sons of Pandu numerous female slaves, and gems and robes. And then the nuptial festival set in between the families of the Matsya king and the Pandavas. And then conchs and cymbals and horns and drums and other musical instruments appointed by the Pandavas began to play in the palace of Virata. And deer of various kinds and clean animals by hundreds were slain. And wines of various kinds and intoxicating juices of trees were profusely collected. And mimes and bards and encomiasts, versed in singing and legendary lore, waited upon the kings and chanted their praises and genealogies. And the matrons of the Matsyas of symmetrical bodies and limbs, and wearing earrings of pearls and gems, headed by Sudeshna, came to the place where the marriage knot was to be tied. And amongst those beautiful females of fair complexion and excellent ornaments, Krishna was the foremost in beauty and fame and splendor. And they all came there, leading forth the princess Uttara decked in every ornament and resembling the daughter of the great Indra himself. And then Dhananjaya, the son of Kunti, accepted Virata's daughter of faultless limbs on behalf of his son by Subhadra. And that great king, Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, who stood there like Indra, also accepted her as his daughter-in-law. And having accepted her, the son of Pritha, with Janadana before him, caused the nuptial ceremonies to be performed of the illustrious son of Subhadra. And Virata then gave him, as dowry, 7,000 steeds endued with the speed of the wind and 200 elephants of the best kind and much wealth also. And having duly poured libations of clarified butter on the blazing fire, and paid homage unto the twice-born ones, Virata offered to the Pandavas his kingdom, army, treasury, and his own self. And after the marriage had taken place, Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, gave away unto the Brahmanas all the wealth that had been brought by Krishna of unfading glory. And he also gave away thousands of kine, and diverse kinds of robes, and various excellent ornaments, and vehicles, and beds, delicious viands of various kinds, and cardinal drinks of diverse species. And the king also made gifts of land unto the Brahmanas with due rights, and also cattle by thousands. And he also gave away thousands of steeds, and much gold, and much wealth of other kinds, unto persons of all ages. And, O bull of the Bharata race, the city of the Matsya king, thronged with men cheerful and well-fed, shone brightly like a great festival. Mahabharata, end of Book 4, Virata Parva. Present you by HinduMonastery.com.